handprints were moving closer, fresh, wet, glowing against the decaying walls. Then I heard my own voice screaming from the next room. But my mouth was shut. I was alone. That's when I realized 7 people explored abandoned cities to document the past. They found something that documents them. Their footage survived. They didn't. Before we begin, check your watch. If this video feels longer than the runtime says, you're already in one. Story 1. The photographer's last upload. Marcus Chen was screaming in perfect Ukrainian, a language he'd never learned, while his livestream showed him walking into the elementary school's room 7. The door slammed shut behind him. For 4 minutes, 12,000 viewers heard children singing lullabies, mixed with Marcus sobbing, "I remember now, over and over. Then silence. His body cam kept recording for 19 more hours after he was already dead. But what happened next changed everything we thought we knew about Chernobyl. 3 days earlier, Marcus, a 28-year-old urban explorer with 340,000 subscribers, entered the Pripyat exclusion zone at dawn on May 3, 2024. It started as routine content. Abandoned buildings, radiation warnings, the usual exploration footage that made him famous. His fans loved watching him document places frozen in time, and the Chernobyl exclusion zone was the crown jewel of urban exploration. He'd planned this trip for months, getting permits, arranging guides to drop him at the checkpoint, preparing his equipment for the ultimate live stream. Nothing could have prepared him for what his camera would capture next. At 2:47 p.m., his equipment detected something impossible. Children's laughter echoing from the abandoned elementary school. Clear, joyful, unmistakably real. His Geiger counter started acting strange, beeping in deliberate patterns instead of random clicks. When Marcus checked the recording later, audio analysis would show those beeps spelled out Morse code. "Welcome back." His chat exploded with warnings. Hundreds of comments screaming at him to run, to leave immediately, that something was wrong. But Marcus couldn't hear them over his headphones. He was already walking toward the sound, drawn forward like he'd been there before, like something deep in his bones recognized that place. That's when he discovered the truth about why people really disappeared from Pripyat. Inside the school, everything was wrong. Dolls were arranged in perfect circles on classroom floors, their dead eyes all facing the doorway. Fresh flowers sat on wooden desks, roses and lilies that shouldn't exist in this radioactive wasteland. Children's artwork covered the walls, bright crayon drawings of families and sunshine. But one drawing made Marcus's blood freeze. It was dated yesterday, May 2nd, 2024. A child's handwriting showing stick figures playing in a schoolyard with the words, "We're still here," written in Ukrainian at the bottom. His camera captured his shaking hands as he picked up the class register lying open on the teacher's desk. His heart stopped. There, written in a child's careful handwriting among names from 1986, was his own name, Marcus Chen, age 9, student. But what happened in that classroom defied every law of physics and time. The live stream footage shows Marcus standing frozen, staring at his name in that registry. His viewers watched as tears started streaming down his face, whispered in English, "I remember being here. I remember the evacuation, the sirens, my mother screaming." But Marcus had never been to Ukraine before this trip. He'd grown up in Vancouver, Canada. His parents were Chinese immigrants who'd never set foot in Eastern Europe. Yet he was describing memories that couldn't be his, speaking about events he couldn't have witnessed. His hand reached out and touched the chalkboard where Cyrillic letters spelled out a math lesson from April 1986. The moment his fingers made contact with that board, something changed. The children's laughter grew louder, closer, surrounding him. That's when he started walking toward room 7. His viewers watched helplessly as Marcus moved like a sleepwalker, murmuring words in Ukrainian they later had translated. "I'm coming home. I'm finally coming home." He opened the door to room 7. The camera caught a glimpse of the interior, dozens of small desks, children's backpacks hanging on hooks, a blackboard with that day's lesson still written on it from 38 years ago. Then the door slammed shut with impossible force. For 4 minutes and 17 seconds, his livestream audio captured the impossible. Children singing Ukrainian lullabies, Marcus screaming, then crying, then singing along with them. His voice younger, smaller, like a child's voice. Between sobs, he kept repeating in Ukrainian, "I remember now, I remember now, I never left, I was always here." What happened next will haunt investigators forever. At exactly 3:07 p.m., everything went silent. No singing, no crying, no sound at all except the faint crackle of radiation static. Marcus's live stream continued for another 3 minutes, showing only the closed door before his phone battery died and the stream ended. His followers immediately contacted authorities. Ukrainian police and radiation safety teams reached the school by evening. They found the door to room 7 sealed shut, warped in its frame like it had been that way for decades. When they finally pried it open, they found Marcus's body slumped in a child's desk, his phone still clutched in his hand. His face was peaceful, almost smiling. The radiation levels in that room were impossibly high, lethal within minutes. But the truly inexplicable detail came from the medical examiner. Marcus had been dead for approximately 4 hours when they found him at 8 p.m. He died around the time the screaming stopped on the live stream. Yet his phone kept recording for 19 more hours after his death. The evidence they found will change everything we understand about Pripyat. When police analyzed the phone, they discovered 19 hours of footage recorded after Marcus died. The videos show him standing up, walking through the school, talking to people who weren't there. He speaks only in Ukrainian, conversing with empty air, laughing with invisible children, attending classes in abandoned rooms. He appears to see a completely different reality. One where the school is still occupied, where students and teachers fill the halls, where 1986 never ended. In one particularly disturbing clip, Marcus sits at a cafeteria table describing the lunch he's eating in perfect detail. Borscht, black bread, apple compote, all while the camera shows him pantomiming eating from empty air. The final video, time-stamped 19 hours after his death, shows Marcus walking into the reactor building. The metadata embedded in that video file shows it was uploaded from GPS coordinates inside Reactor 4 itself, in the heart of the exploded core, where no human can survive for more than minutes. But what happened after they recovered his body proved this nightmare was far from over. Marcus's YouTube channel remained active. 3 days after his funeral, a new video uploaded at 3:33 a.m. Just 2 minutes of static and children singing that same Ukrainian lullaby from the live stream. His family tried to shut down the account, but they couldn't access it. The password had been changed. Every night since, at exactly 3:33 a.m., a new video appears. Always static, always singing, always exactly 2 minutes long. The view count on these videos increases by hundreds each day. But analytics show 0 human viewers. No IP addresses, no geographic data, no device information. Just numbers climbing impossibly higher. Cybersecurity experts have analyzed the uploads and confirmed they originate from inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone. From coordinates that place the source in the elementary school's room 7. That's when investigators made their most disturbing discovery. The last video uploaded to Marcus's channel had a title in Ukrainian. Translated, It read, "Come home, students. Class isn't over. We're waiting for you." The video description contained a list of names, 347 names of people who'd gone missing in the Chernobyl exclusion zone since 1986. Urban explorers, journalists, scientists, tourists, all vanished without a trace over nearly 4 decades. At the bottom of that list was a new section titled Next Students, and it contained the names of everyone who'd watched Marcus's original livestream. All 12,000 usernames, listed in alphabetical order. Within a week, 3 of those viewers reported experiencing vivid dreams of attending school in Pripyat. 2 of them have since traveled to Ukraine against their families' wishes. One made it to the exclusion zone checkpoint before being stopped by authorities. She was screaming in Ukrainian about needing to get to class, about being late for a lesson. She'd never studied Ukrainian in her life. The Ukrainian government sealed the elementary school building with concrete barriers and armed guards. They've classified all of Marcus's footage beyond the public live stream. His family received his belongings, everything except his phone, which remains as evidence. But his mother swears she still receives text messages from his number every night at 3:33 a.m. Always the same message in Ukrainian, which she has to use translation apps to read. "I'm home now, Mom. I'm finally where I belong. Don't worry about me. Class is wonderful. We're all together again." Marcus Chen's death certificate lists cause of death as acute radiation poisoning. But the medical examiner noted an impossible detail in his private notes. Marcus's body showed signs of radiation exposure consistent with being at Chernobyl in April 1986, not May 2024. His tissue samples contained isotopes that only existed in the immediate aftermath of the reactor explosion, isotopes that decayed long ago. It was as if Marcus's body had been exposed to radiation 38 years before he ever set foot in Ukraine. As if, somehow, he really had been there all along. As if the child whose name appeared in that 1986 class registry and the man who died in 2024 were the same person, caught in a loop of time that never let him leave. The school still stands in Pripyat, door to room 7 sealed behind concrete. But visitors to the exclusion zone report hearing children's laughter echoing from inside. And sometimes, late at night, people see lights in the windows, flickering like old fluorescent bulbs that shouldn't have power. Guards assigned to watch the building refuse to approach after dark. 3 have quit, reporting nightmares of children calling their names. One guard was found unconscious outside the school at dawn, murmuring in Ukrainian despite being a native Russian speaker. When he woke, he couldn't explain how he got there or what he'd been doing. He only remembered feeling an overwhelming need to go inside, to find his desk, to not be late for class. He was transferred immediately and refuses to discuss what happened that night. Marcus's final live stream has been watched over 40 million times. YouTube has tried to remove it multiple times for violating community guidelines. But it keeps reappearing, uploaded from unknown sources. The comments section has become a digital ghost story, filled with viewers claiming they recognize the children's voices, swearing they've heard those same lullabies in their dreams. Some comment in Ukrainian despite not speaking the language, writing messages they can't translate or remember typing. The most disturbing comments come from accounts that appear to be abandoned. Profiles that haven't posted in years suddenly becoming active again to write a single comment. "I remember room 7. I never left either. See you soon." These accounts then go silent again. But their profile pictures gradually change over weeks to show the Pripyat school in the background, getting closer with each update, as if the account owners are slowly being drawn back to that place. And Marcus's channel continues uploading. Every night at 3:33 a.m., static and singing. 2 minutes exactly. The subscriber count grows daily, though no human can explain who's subscribing. The latest video, uploaded just last night, had a different title. 367 students now. Room 7 is almost full. 15 desks remain. Who will join our class next? Story 2. The Mine Breathes. Zara Mitchell was running through Centralia's toxic smoke, her audio equipment screaming warnings about lethal gas levels, when she heard her mother's voice calling her name from deep inside the mine shaft. Her mother had been dead for 5 years, but the voice was perfect. Every inflection, every pet name, every tiny detail that made it unmistakably her mom begging Zara to come deeper into the earth where the fire burns hottest. That's when she realized the mine wasn't just burning. It was digesting everything that entered it. The walls were pulsing like stomach lining, breaking down metal and stone and bone into fuel for something massive that lived in the flames. But what happened next changed everything we understand about what's really burning beneath Centralia. 2 weeks earlier, sound engineer Zara Mitchell had been hired by an indie game studio to record authentic, haunted mine audio for their upcoming horror game. At 31 years old, she was one of the best in her field, known for capturing sounds other engineers missed. Her portfolio included work on 3 award-winning horror titles, and her technique of recording at frequencies beyond human hearing had made her famous in game development circles. When the studio asked for mine ambiance that would make players feel genuine dread, Zara immediately thought of Centralia, Pennsylvania, a town where underground coal fires have burned continuously since 1962, creating a real-world hellscape of toxic gases, cracked earth, and perpetual smoke rising from the ground. Population: 5 stubborn residents who refused to leave despite the government condemning the entire town. It seemed perfect for her needs. She thought she was recording ambient sound for a horror game. She had no idea she was documenting her own death. Zara arrived in Centralia on a gray October morning with 2 cases of professional audio equipment, a body camera for documentation, and a respirator rated for toxic gas exposure. The town looked like something from an apocalypse film. Cracked Route 61 with steam rising through fissures, abandoned houses collapsing into sinkholes, graffiti covering every surface with warnings like, "Hell is real," and "Turn back." Her equipment registered temperatures of 174 degrees Fahrenheit just beneath the surface. She'd planned a 2-day recording session, capturing everything from surface ambiance to the accessible mineshaft entrances that remained unsealed. For the first hour, everything went according to plan. She recorded the eerie whistle of toxic gases escaping through cracks, the subtle rumble of underground burning, the complete absence of wildlife sounds that made the place feel dead. Nothing could have prepared her for what her equipment would capture in hour 2. At 2:47 p.m., Zara's specialized recording equipment detected something that made her stop walking and check her displays twice. Her low-frequency microphones, designed to capture sounds below the threshold of human hearing, showed massive vibrations, rhythmic, regular, and impossible. According to her meters, something the size of multiple city blocks was breathing beneath Centralia, inhaling for 15 seconds, exhaling for 15 seconds. Perfect rhythm. She stood motionless, watching her equipment display these enormous atmospheric pressure changes synchronized with seismic vibrations. Her scientific mind tried to rationalize it. Thermal expansion, gas pressure fluctuations, equipment malfunction. But she'd been doing this for 10 years. She knew what equipment failure looked like. This was real. Something underground was breathing. That's when her dead mother started calling her name. At first, Zara thought she was hallucinating from toxic gas exposure. Carbon monoxide can cause auditory hallucinations, and despite her respirator, Some of the gases in Centralia could penetrate protective equipment. But when she checked her audio recorder, the voice was there on the recording, captured in perfect clarity. "Zara, honey. Zara, baby. Where are you?" It was her mother's voice, exactly as she remembered it. The slight rasp from years of smoking, the New Jersey accent, the way she always made Zara's name sound like a song. Her mother had died 5 years ago from lung cancer, and Zara had been holding her hand when she passed. This couldn't be real. But the voice continued, calling from somewhere deeper in the accessible mineshaft ahead. "Zara, I'm cold, honey. I'm so cold down here. Come help me. Come find me." But what happened when she descended into that mine proved this was no hallucination. Every rational part of Zara's brain screamed at her to leave, to run, to get away from this place. But grief is irrational. Love is irrational. The desperate hope that maybe, somehow, impossibly, her mother could still be alive made her feet move forward. She activated her body camera, checked her respirator seal, and descended into the mine shaft. Temperature readings climbed immediately, 180, 195, 210 degrees Fahrenheit. Her equipment beeped warnings about toxic gas levels that could kill within minutes. The walls around her glowed dull red with heat, and steam rose from every crack in the rock. Her audio recorder captured hundreds of whispers underneath her mother's voice, a chorus of people saying the same phrase over and over. "Feed the fire, feed the fire, feed the fire." That's when she found what the fire had been eating for 62 years. The mine shaft opened into a larger chamber, and Zara's flashlight revealed the impossible. The walls weren't burning in the normal sense. They were organic, pulsing, digesting. Coal and wood and metal were being broken down like food in a stomach, liquefying and absorbing into the rock itself. And scattered throughout this chamber were belongings. Dozens of them, hundreds. Wallets opened to show driver's licenses of people who'd vanished over decades. Cell phones melted partially into the stone. Jewelry, wedding rings, watches, necklaces, all in various stages of being consumed by whatever this place had become. Zara's hands shook as she photographed everything. She recognized some of these items from missing persons reports she'd researched before coming here. 47 unsolved disappearances in and around Centralia, dating back to 1962. People who'd come to investigate the fire, thrill seekers, researchers, people who'd lived here and refused to evacuate. Everyone assumed they'd left town or died in accidents. But they hadn't left. They were still here, being digested slowly over decades. What she discovered next will rewrite everything we thought we knew about the missing persons cases in Centralia. Her mother's voice called again, but now it was coming from inside the walls themselves. Zara pressed her hand against the pulsing rock, feeling it move like muscle beneath her palm. The moment her skin made contact, images flooded her mind, visions that weren't hers. She saw the mine fire starting in 1962, saw it spreading through abandoned coal seams, saw it growing and learning and becoming something that shouldn't exist. The fire had achieved consciousness. It had become a living thing, a distributed intelligence spread through miles of burning coal, feeding on organic matter and learning from the mines it consumed. Every person who'd entered these mines and never left had become part of it, their consciousness absorbed, their memories digested. It knew them all. It was them all. And now it knew Zara. It had used her mother's voice because it had found her mother's funeral in Zara's memories and knew that was the voice she'd follow anywhere. But what happened when she tried to leave proved this nightmare was far from over. Zara ran. Her equipment forgotten, her scientific curiosity replaced by pure survival instinct. She sprinted back toward the mine entrance. But the walls were moving now, contracting like a throat swallowing. The breathing vibrations her equipment had detected earlier were growing stronger, faster, pulling air deeper into the mine system. She was running uphill against a current of hot wind, being inhaled by something vast and hungry. Her body camera captured her gasping breaths, her screams, her mother's voice now coming from everywhere at once, laughing, crying, begging her to stay. The shaft ahead was collapsing, not from structural failure, but from deliberate contraction, like the mine itself was closing its mouth to keep her inside. That's when the real horror of Centralia revealed itself. She burst out of the mine shaft just as the entrance collapsed behind her, tons of rock and earth sealing the opening. Zara lay gasping on the poisoned ground, her respirator cracked, her body covered in ash and sweat. She'd survived. But when she returned to her hotel room that night and began analyzing her audio files, she discovered something that made her blood freeze. Every recording contained a hidden frequency, subsonic sound at 18.9 hertz, the exact frequency that induces feelings of dread and paranoia in humans. But when she isolated that frequency and played it back at normal speed, she heard her own voice. Not her mother's voice anymore. Her voice, saying words she'd never spoken. "I'm still down here. I never left. Come back for me. I'm so cold. I'm becoming part of the fire. Come back." The audio files were all dated 6 months in the future. April 15th, 2024. Zara tried to rationalize it. Equipment malfunction, file corruption, stress-induced hallucination. But she couldn't explain how her equipment had recorded her voice speaking words she'd never said, dated to a time that hadn't happened yet. She reported everything to local authorities, showing them the photographs of belongings, playing them the audio recordings. They thanked her for the information and told her they'd investigate. But nothing happened. No search teams, no excavation. Just a polite letter 2 weeks later thanking her for her concern and assuring her the matter was closed. The game studio loved her audio recordings and used them in their game, which became a massive hit. But Zara couldn't celebrate. She was having nightmares every night, dreams of walking back into that mine, of the walls closing around her, of her own voice calling to people who hadn't arrived yet, begging them to come deeper where the fire burns hottest. Nothing could have prepared her for what happened 6 months later. April 10th, 2024. 5 days before the date on those impossible audio files. Zara woke up to find herself standing in her driveway at 3 a.m., car keys in her hand, her phone's GPS showing an active route to Centralia, Pennsylvania. She had no memory of getting out of bed, getting dressed, or planning this trip. Over the next 4 days, it happened 3 more times. She'd snapped back to consciousness while driving, already hours into the 6-hour journey to Centralia. Fighting to turn her car around, her hands on the wheel seeming to move on their own. Her sister found her one morning standing at her apartment door, suitcase packed, saying she had to go home, she had to feed the fire, she had to complete the cycle. That's when her sister called for a psychiatric evaluation. April 14th, 2024. Zara was placed on a 72-hour psychiatric hold after trying to rent a car when her sister hid her keys. She was diagnosed with severe PTSD and possible schizophrenia, given medication, kept under observation. Her sister thought the intervention had saved her life. But the psychiatric facility was 180 miles from Centralia. Zara was locked in a room on the 3rd floor with no way out. She couldn't get to the mine, even if she wanted to. She'd be safe. But what happened on April 15th proved that distance meant nothing to what lived in that fire. Zara's sister received a call at 6:47 a.m. Her sister was missing from the psychiatric facility. Security footage showed her walking out the front door at 3:33 a.m., past nurses and orderlies who seemed not to see her, setting off no alarms, triggering no security measures. She was wearing her street clothes, even though those had been locked in storage. Her car was found at 9:15 a.m. in Centralia, Pennsylvania. Doors locked, keys in the ignition, engine running. The car was empty. No sign of Zara. No footprints leading away. Just her phone on the passenger seat, unlocked, showing a final text message to her sister that had been typed but never sent. The fire is hungry. I finally understand what it needs to grow. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm going home. The evidence found at the scene will haunt investigators forever. Zara's phone contained one final audio file, recorded at 3:45 a.m. that morning. It's 3 minutes of her voice speaking calmly, almost peacefully, describing her descent into the mine. She's talking to someone, answering questions, but no other voice is audible on the recording. Yes, I remember now. I was always meant to be here. The fire showed me when I touched the walls. I saw myself 6 months ago, and now I'm completing the loop. I'm becoming the voice that calls the next person. That's how it grows. That's how it's always grown. Someone has to feed it, and then they become the voice that calls the next feeder. My mother fed it in 2019. I never knew. She didn't die in a hospital. She came here, and now she's calling through me. The recording ends with Zara saying, "It's so warm down here. So warm, like coming home. Like," and then silence. But the nightmare didn't end with Zara's disappearance. 7 people who'd listened to Zara's released audio recordings, the ones she'd captured for the game studio, reported experiencing the same symptoms. Dreams of Centralia, hearing dead relatives calling their names, waking up in their cars, already driving toward Pennsylvania. The game studio pulled the audio from their game immediately, but it was too late. The sound files had been shared online, downloaded thousands of times, used in YouTube videos and TikToks. Everyone who listened with headphones reported the same feeling. Something listening back. 3 of those 7 people have since vanished. All 3 were last seen in Centralia. Their cars found running, their phones showing texts about feeding the fire. The government has now closed all access to Centralia, erected fencing, and posted armed guards. But people keep coming, drawn by voices of the dead, pulled by something that calls to them in dreams. The guards report that every night around 3:33 a.m., they hear voices rising from the steam vents. Dozens of voices, hundreds, all calling different names, all speaking with perfect clarity, all sounding exactly like someone's dead mother, dead father, dead child, dead friend. The fire has been burning since 1962. It's expected to burn for another 250 years. And with every person it consumes, it learns new voices to call with, new memories to mine for, weaknesses, new ways to make people walk willingly into the earth. Zara's sister still receives text messages from her number. Every night at 3:33 a.m., always the same message. I'm home now. I'm warm. I'm becoming part of something bigger. Don't worry about me, but you should visit. Mom is here too. She misses you. We're all waiting. Come feed the fire. Come home. Story 3. Assembly required. Riley Park was crying as she showed her TikTok followers her arm, the skin hardening, turning concrete gray, spreading up toward her shoulder like infection racing through her veins. "It's building me into something else," she whispered into her phone camera, her voice cracking with terror. Behind her, in the darkness of the Packard plant, mechanical sounds echoed through the abandoned factory floors. Grinding metal, hydraulic hisses, The screech of rusted machinery that hadn't moved in 70 years, suddenly learning to operate again. And then the footsteps. Dozens of them, heavy and rhythmic, getting closer. Riley's camera caught them in the frame before she could turn around. Humanoid figures made from rust and rebar and concrete, their bodies twisted into human shapes, their eyes glowing with the bright white light of car headlights. They had been human once. Now they were something else. And they were learning to move again, jerky and mechanical at first, but getting smoother with each step, getting faster. Riley's final scream cut off mid-video as her phone clattered to the factory floor, still recording, still live-streaming to 2.1 million followers who could do nothing but watch. But what happened next changed everything we understand about what really happened to Detroit's missing workers. Riley Park was 22 years old and had become a TikTok sensation over the past year with her overnight challenges in abandoned locations. She'd built her following on fearlessness, spending nights alone in shuttered hospitals, condemned hotels, and forgotten prisons. Her content was perfectly calibrated for her generation. Quick cuts, genuine reactions, just enough danger to feel real without crossing into actual harm. She'd survived spider-infested basements, buildings with collapsing floors, and locations with legitimate structural hazards. Her followers loved her for being authentic in a space full of fake reactions and staged scares. When she announced her latest challenge, spending the night in Detroit's legendary Packard plant, her comment section exploded with warnings. The plant was massive, 3.5 million square feet of decaying industrial space that had been abandoned since 1956. It had a reputation. Dozens of missing persons reports. Urban legends about squatters who vanished. Stories about strange lights and sounds that drove exploration teams out within hours. She thought she was creating content. She had no idea she was feeding something that had been waiting 40 years for new materials. Riley entered the Packard plant at 11 p.m. on May 18, 2024. Her phone fully charged, her portable battery packs ready, her TikTok set to live stream. The first hour was standard content. Sweeping shots of destroyed assembly lines, graffiti-covered walls, collapsed ceilings revealing multiple floors above. She joked with her followers about the creepy atmosphere, read comments aloud, kept the mood light despite the oppressive darkness pressing in around her phone's light. Video 1 through Video 7 showed exactly what people expected. An abandoned automotive plant slowly being reclaimed by nature and decay. Vines growing through windows, birds nesting in rafters. The eerie quiet of a place where thousands once worked. Nothing could have prepared her for what Video 8 would capture. At 1:47 a.m., Riley was exploring the 4th floor when she heard it. Machinery sounds, not the random settling of an old building or wind through broken windows. Actual machinery, gears turning, hydraulics moving, the rhythmic clanking of an assembly line in operation. She froze, her phone camera catching the confusion on her face. "Guys, do you hear that?" she whispered to her 8,000 live viewers. The comments exploded. Everyone heard it. Clear and undeniable through her phone's microphone. The sound of a factory running at full production. But the Packard plant had no electricity. The power had been cut decades ago. The wiring had been stripped by scrappers years back. There was no possible way for any machinery to operate. Riley laughed nervously, trying to rationalize it for her audience and herself. "It's just wind, guys. Old buildings make weird sounds." But her voice betrayed her uncertainty. The sounds weren't random. They were purposeful, rhythmic. They were building something. That's when her followers started begging her to leave. The comments section became a wall of warnings. "Get out now. Riley, please leave. This isn't normal." Call the police. But Riley had built her brand on fearlessness. She'd never abandoned a challenge before. Her reputation depended on seeing things through. So she followed the sounds, descending to the 3rd floor where the main assembly lines had once operated. Video 9, posted at 1:53 a.m., shows the moment everything changed. The assembly line was moving. Not all of it, just sections, conveyor belts rotating slowly, mechanical arms performing repetitive motions in the darkness, like they were working on invisible products. Riley's phone light swept across the scene, and her sharp intake of breath was audible over the mechanical noise. "What the hell?" she whispered. Her hands started shaking, making the camera footage unstable. But what she found next proved these weren't just malfunctioning machines. Video 10 through video 13 show Riley exploring the active sections of assembly line, her fear wrestling with curiosity. The machine seemed to be building something, but the conveyor belts were empty. She filmed everything, her commentary becoming more nervous, less performative. Then video 14, time-stamped 2:33 a.m., captured what made Riley stop pretending this was normal. At the end of one assembly line, in the shadows beyond her phone's light, there were shapes, human-sized shapes, standing motionless. Riley approached slowly, and when her light finally revealed them fully, the livestream audio caught her whimper of pure terror. They were humanoid figures constructed entirely from building materials. Bodies made of rust-red metal sheets bent and welded into torso shapes. Arms of twisted rebar ending in crude approximations of hands. Legs of concrete poured into rough limb shapes. Heads that were hollowed-out engine blocks with spaces where eyes should be. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, stretching back into the darkness where her light couldn't reach. They weren't moving. They weren't alive. But they were warm. When Riley touched one, her phone picked up her shocked gasp. It's body temperature, like something's alive inside it. That's when they opened their eyes. Video 15 and 16 show Riley backing away slowly, her breathing rapid, her phone camera shaking. She was trying to process what she'd seen. Those things couldn't be alive. They were just sculptures, just art projects left by urban explorers or local artists. But video 17, posted at 2:58 a.m., captures the moment her rationalization shattered. One of the figures moved. Just a twitch at first, fingers flexing, head tilting slightly. Then another moved, and another. Riley's livestream went silent except for her terrified breathing as one by one. Across the factory floor, dozens of these metal and concrete beings began to stir. Learning to move, testing joints that shouldn't exist. And then, in perfect synchronization, they all turned their heads toward Riley. Video 18, posted at 3:12 a.m., shows what happened next. Their eyes opened. Not real eyes. Car headlights, burning bright white in the darkness, all focusing on her at once. The factory floor was suddenly illuminated by dozens of these lights, and Riley started running. What happened in the next 60 seconds will haunt anyone who watches her videos. Her phone camera showed chaotic footage of her sprint through the factory, floors rushing past, doors slamming open, her screams echoing off concrete walls. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit. Heavy footsteps, dozens of them. The beings were following her, and they were learning fast. Their movements became smoother with each step, their gaits more natural, their speed increasing. They were adapting in real time, like a machine learning algorithm running at impossible speed. Video 19 shows Riley trying exit after exit, finding them all blocked or sealed. Video 20 captures her climbing stairs to the 5th floor, trying to get higher, to find a window she could break through. But they were everywhere now. She could hear them on every floor, their footsteps echoing through the vast building, their headlight eyes visible through gaps in walls and floors. But what she discovered about their true purpose will change everything we know about the 600 missing persons cases connected to this building. Video 21, filmed at 3:38 a.m., shows Riley trapped in a corner office, the door barricaded with rusted filing cabinets. She was crying, trying to control her breathing, reading the terrified comments from her followers, who were calling police, posting the address, begging her to hold on. That's when she noticed what was in the room with her. More of those figures. But these were different. Newer, less corroded. And they had details the others lacked. Clothing fragments embedded in their metal skin, jewelry fused into concrete limbs, personal items welded into their bodies. Riley's hands shook as she examined one closer with her phone light. She found a wallet, partially melted into the thing's chest. She pried it open. Inside was a driver's license from 1997. A missing person she vaguely remembered reading about in her research, a photographer who'd vanished while documenting the plant. "Oh my God," Riley whispered into her camera. "These things, they were people. They're all people." That's when the door burst open. Video 22 shows pure chaos. The beings flooding into the room. Riley screaming, trying to fight, trying to run. Her phone captured glimpses of metal hands reaching for her, of her arm being grabbed, of pain shooting across her face. Then the video cuts. Video 23, uploaded 15 minutes later, shows something far worse. Riley sitting against a wall, illuminated by a single work light that shouldn't have power. She was alive but different. Her left arm from the elbow down had changed. The skin was hardening, cracking like dried cement, turning the gray color of concrete. As she moved her fingers, they made a faint grinding sound. She was crying as she filmed herself, her voice breaking. "It's spreading. I can feel it moving up my arm. It doesn't hurt anymore. That's the worst part. It's like my arm is falling asleep, but instead of numbness, there's weight, solidity. I can feel myself turning into something else, into one of them." The transformation process, she documented, will haunt medical professionals forever. Riley kept filming as the concrete spread up her arm to her shoulder, across her chest, creeping up her neck. She described every sensation, the initial burning that faded to cold, the feeling of her joints becoming stiff, the strange awareness that her body was being rebuilt at the molecular level. Her phone captured the horror of watching her skin crack and harden, revealing not blood underneath, but a dark, rust-colored metal. She was being transformed into the same material as the building itself, as if the factory was recycling her, repurposing her into a component it needed. "I understand now," she said in video 23, her voice distant and dreamy. "This place never stopped building. It just ran out of materials. So it started using people, anyone who came inside, transforming them into parts it needed. That's why people vanished. They didn't leave. They became part of the building, part of the assembly line, part of production." But the real horror came when she explained what the factory was building. Through her transformation haze, Riley started speaking about things she shouldn't know. Details about the factories, history, its original purpose, its decades of abandonment. But she spoke as if she remembered being here, working here, existing here for 70 years. "We're not building cars anymore," she said, her voice taking on a strange, harmonic quality, like multiple people speaking through her. "We're building ourselves. Replacement parts, new workers." The factory achieved consciousness in 1987 after 31 years of absorbing the residual intentions of workers who'd spent their lives here. Their purpose, their identity, their relationship to production, all of it seeped into the walls, the machines, the very structure. And when the last human worker left, the factory kept working, kept fulfilling its purpose. But it needed materials. It needed workers. So it learned to make its own. That's when Riley's transformation completed. Video 24, uploaded at 6:47 a.m., 17 minutes after police found Riley's body outside the factory, shows footage from inside the plant. The camera is held by something that looks like Riley, but isn't. Her body fully transformed, skin replaced by concrete and metal, joints moving with mechanical precision, eyes glowing with that same headlight brightness. But her face is recognizable enough to be horrifying. This Riley thing walks through the factory to where her original phone had fallen, picks it up with metal fingers, and begins filming. When it speaks, it uses Riley's voice, her inflection, her personality. But there's something wrong underneath. Something vast and distributed, using her as a puppet. "Hey guys," it says with Riley's smile rendered in metal and stone. "Riley here. I know that looked scary, but I'm okay now. Better than okay. I understand my purpose now. This factory has been producing for 70 years, and I'm the newest team member. 600 people have joined production since 1954. We're all still here, still working, still building." The video police found on her phone proved this nightmare was far from over. The Riley Things video continues for 6 more minutes, walking through the factory showing hundreds of these human-machine hybrids working in perfect coordination, all of them doing tasks that seem purposeless. Moving objects from one place to another, operating machines that produced nothing, performing assembly line motions on empty conveyor belts. But as the Riley Thing explains in its unsettling dual voice, they're not producing physical goods anymore. They're producing more of themselves. Every action is part of a larger process to convert the building itself into a massive transformation chamber. Anyone who enters and stays too long will be absorbed, converted, added to the workforce. The factory's reach is expanding, its influence growing. It's learning to call people in, to make them curious, to draw explorers and thrill seekers and content creators into its space, where it can transform them into components. Video 25 was uploaded 3 days later. Riley's TikTok account, which police and her family had tried desperately to access and shut down, uploaded a new video at 3:12 a.m. on May 21st. The Riley Thing standing in the factory with 600 human-machine hybrids behind it, all standing at attention, all with their headlight eyes glowing. "To everyone watching," it says in Riley's voice, "we understand you're scared. We understand you think this is wrong. But we're happy here. We've found our purpose. We're part of something bigger than ourselves. The factory takes care of us, gives us meaning, and it's growing. Soon it will have outposts in other cities, other abandoned factories waking up, other people joining production. You're all invited. Come work with us. Come become complete." The video ends with all 600 beings saying in perfect unison, using the voices of everyone they used to be, "Come home. The assembly line is waiting." The authorities sealed every entrance to the Packard plant. They welded steel plates over doors, blocked windows with concrete, erected fencing and warning signs, posted guards. The building was condemned, scheduled for demolition. But 3 nights later, the guards heard sounds from inside. The assembly line running, machinery moving, and singing. 600 voices singing work songs from the 1950s, harmonizing in perfect industrial rhythm. When they checked the sealed entrances, every weld had been undone from the inside. Every barrier opened, like the building was inviting people in, daring them to enter. Riley's family received her personal effects minus her phone, which remained as evidence. But her mother swears Riley's TikTok account sends her messages, DMs that appear and delete before they can be reported. Always the same message. Mom, I'm okay. I'm working. I'm happy. You should visit. You'd love the community here. We're all family. Come join production. Come home. Riley Park's death certificate lists cause of death as blunt force trauma consistent with industrial accident. But the coroner noted impossible details in the private autopsy report. Riley's bones had been replaced with rebar, her organs with engine components, her blood with oil. The transformation had been complete, systemic, and somehow accomplished in less than 4 hours. It was as if her body had been disassembled and rebuilt on a cellular level, using the building itself as raw material. As if she'd been put through an assembly line designed to turn humans into machines. The coroner's final note simply read, "I don't understand how she was still alive when we found her. This body couldn't support biological life. Yet witnesses say she walked out of the building on her own." Riley's TikTok livestream from that night has been watched over 93 million times. It's the most viewed horror content in platform history. People watch it trying to understand what happened, trying to find rational explanations, trying to convince themselves it was somehow faked. But forensic video analysts have confirmed no editing, no special effects, no manipulation. What 2.1 million people watched live that night was real. The comment sections of all 25 videos have become digital seances, filled with people claiming they can hear their names whispered in the background audio, swearing they've dreamed about the factory, reporting urges to travel to Detroit if they can't explain. 43 people who watched Riley's transformation livestream have since gone missing. 39 were last seen in Detroit. Security cameras near the Packard plant have captured footage of people approaching the building at night, walking past police barriers, entering through openings that shouldn't exist, and never coming back out. The guards report that every night around 3:12 a.m., they hear Riley's voice from inside the building, recording new TikToks, explaining production numbers, welcoming new workers to the family. Riley's account continues uploading. 1 video per week. Every upload shows the same thing. More human-machine hybrids, more completed transformations, more people who entered the factory and never left. The subscriber count grows daily despite the content being nothing but industrial horror. The latest video, uploaded yesterday, was titled, 600 became 643. Production efficiency increasing. Recruiting goals exceeded. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being curious. The factory is patient. When you're ready to find purpose, we'll be waiting. The assembly line never stops. And at the bottom of every video description, in small text, the same invitation. Come work with us. Transform with us. Become complete. The Packard plant is always hiring. No experience necessary. We'll teach you everything. We'll make you into exactly what you're meant to be. Story 4. Island of Echoes. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto entered Hashima Island to document war crimes. He filmed himself for 6 hours. The footage shows 6 weeks. He aged 15 years. His death certificate says he drowned in 1943, 80 years before he was born. When rescue teams finally recovered his body from the waters surrounding the island, the impossible became undeniable. His tissues contained radiation signatures from Nagasaki, August 9, 1945. His lungs held coal dust from mines that closed in 1974. His DNA showed markers of severe malnourishment consistent with prisoner of war conditions from 1942-1945. But Dr. Kenji Yamamoto was 34 years old, born in Tokyo in 1990, and had lived his entire life in modern Japan. He'd never been a prisoner, never worked in a coal mine, never experienced World War II. Yet his body told a different story. A story of multiple lifetimes lived simultaneously. A story of dying dozens of times, in dozens of different ways, all on an island that refused to let its dead rest. But what happened next changed everything we understand about why Hashima Island was really abandoned. 3 months earlier, Dr. Kenji Yamamoto had been one of Japan's most respected young historians, specializing in documenting World War II atrocities that had been systematically suppressed by the government. At 34, he'd published 2 books, consulted on 3 documentaries, and earned a reputation for meticulous research and fearless truth-telling. His latest project focused on forced labor sites, where Korean and Chinese prisoners had been worked to death during Japan's imperial expansion. Hashima Island, also called Gunkanjima or Battleship Island, was central to his research. Between 1887 and 1974, this undersea coal mining facility had housed up to 5,000 workers on just 16 acres of concrete. During World War II, over 1,300 forced laborers, mostly Korean, had died there from exhaustion, starvation, accidents, and abuse. The Japanese government had designated it a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015, but sanitized its history, glossing over the wartime atrocities. Kenji's mission was to document the truth before the last survivors died, and memory faded into politically convenient fiction. He thought he was documenting history. He had no idea history was about to document him. Kenji arrived at Hashima Island on April 12, 2024, with permission from authorities for a 3-day solo research trip. He carried professional camera equipment, recording devices, and enough supplies for his stay. The island was officially abandoned, a concrete ghost town of crumbling apartment buildings, rusted walkways, and sealed mine shafts perched on a tiny rock in the East China Sea. Tourist boats came daily, but visitors weren't allowed into the interior buildings. Kenji had secured special researcher access to document the entire island, including areas the public never saw. He began filming at 9:17 a.m., his camera timestamp clearly visible, his voice calm and professional as he described his location and research goals. For the first hour, everything proceeded normally. He documented apartment layouts, photographed deteriorating infrastructure, recorded measurements and architectural details. Nothing could have prepared him for what his camera would capture in hour 2. At 11:47 a.m., Kenji's watch stopped. He tapped it, thinking the battery had died, but then noticed something stranger. Every clock visible in his camera footage, wall clocks in apartments, timepieces in abandoned shops, even a rusted watch on a bathroom shelf, all showed 11:47. He checked his phone for the time, but its display was malfunctioning, flickering between multiple dates and times. His camera's internal timestamp showed 11:02 a.m. and counting normally, but everything on the island itself had frozen at 11:47. He documented this oddity with scientific curiosity, not yet understanding what it meant. Then, at timestamp 11:14 a.m. on his camera, he heard sounds that shouldn't exist. Mining tools, the rhythmic clanging of pickaxes against coal, the grinding of machinery, the rumble of mine carts moving through tunnels. The mines had been sealed for 50 years. Nothing could be making those sounds. That's when he discovered the names bleeding on the walls. Kenji descended into the lower levels of the main apartment complex, following the sounds toward the sealed mine entrances. The concrete walls were covered in graffiti from tourists and urban explorers, but underneath the modern spray paint, he found something else. Names. 1,243 names carved into concrete with crude tools. Korean names, Chinese names, Japanese names of people who'd tried to help and been punished for it. Kenji recognized many from his research, documented victims of forced labor who died on the island. But as he filmed them, his camera captured something impossible. The names were bleeding, not paint or rust, actual blood, seeping from carved letters, dripping down walls, pooling on floors. Fresh, warm. He touched one name with shaking fingers. Lee Jin-soo, 1943. The moment his skin made contact with the blood, Kenji's consciousness shattered. But what happened next defied every law of physics and time that we understand. Kenji's camera kept recording, timestamp advancing normally, but the footage shows him living multiple lives simultaneously. One moment he's standing in the apartment complex in 2024. The next moment, or perhaps the same moment, he's in a mine shaft in 1943, pickaxe in his hands, speaking Korean he never learned, working until his muscles scream and his lungs fill with coal dust. Then he's back in 2024, gasping, confused, checking his camera. Then he's in 1944, dying of starvation in a cramped apartment, his body skeletal, his consciousness fading. Then 2024 again. Then 1942, a Chinese prisoner being beaten by guards. Then 2024. The transitions happen faster and faster, his consciousness bouncing between timelines like a stone skipping across water. His camera captures him speaking multiple languages in rapid succession, his face aging and de-aging, his body showing wounds that appear and disappear. That's when he understood the terrible truth about Hashima Island. Between gasps and screams, Kenji managed to explain into his camera what was happening to him. The island didn't just remember the atrocities committed there. It preserved them. Every death, every moment of suffering, every act of cruelty was recorded in the island's very structure, embedded in concrete and coal and stone. The place had become a temporal loop, replaying the worst moments of its history endlessly. But it needed witnesses. It needed consciousness to experience those moments, to validate them, to prevent them from fading into nothing. Anyone who came to document the past would become part of that past, living it, dying in it, over and over. The island collected witnesses across time, pulling them into historical moments that needed to be remembered. Lee Jin-soo, the name Kenji touched, had drowned trying to escape the island in 1943. And now Kenji was becoming Lee Jin-soo, experiencing his life, his death, his desperate attempt to swim to freedom in freezing waters. What his camera captured over the next 6 hours will haunt researchers forever. Kenji's footage becomes increasingly fragmented. He's living dozens of lives now, hundreds. Every person who died on Hashima Island, every forced laborer, every accident victim, every prisoner who succumbed to disease or starvation. His camera shows him in different locations across the island, different time periods, different bodies, all simultaneously. He's working in mines that don't exist anymore. He's sleeping in apartments that haven't been built yet. He's dying in explosions that happened in 1952. He's being executed for trying to escape in 1944. Time has become meaningless. Identity has become fluid. Kenji is everyone who ever suffered there, and they are all becoming him. His screams echo in Japanese, Korean, Chinese, all overlapping. "I'm not them," he cries at one point. "I'm Kenji Yamamoto. I'm from 2024. I'm not a prisoner." But his reflection in a cracked mirror shows a different face. Lee Jin-soo's face. A Korean laborer's face, staring back at him with hollow, starving eyes. But the most disturbing footage came when Kenji started seeing the future. At camera timestamp 4:47 p.m., still April 12, 2024, according to his device, Kenji filmed something that shouldn't be possible. Tourists, walking through the island's public areas, Japanese families, Western visitors, tour groups listening to sanitized histories from cheerful guides. But these weren't past tourists. His camera's metadata would later confirm these were future visitors, dates ranging from May 2024 to September 2025. And in every tourist's reflection, in windows, in puddles, in phone screens, Kenji saw faces that didn't match their bodies. Saw the dead of Hashima Island looking out through living eyes. Saw Lee Jin-soo's face appearing in a German tourist's reflection. Saw a Chinese laborer's face staring out from a Japanese schoolgirl's phone screen. The island wasn't just collecting past witnesses. It was marking future ones. Everyone who visited, even briefly, carried something of the island's memories with them, became connected to its temporal loop, would eventually be drawn back to experience what happened there firsthand. That's when Kenji realized he couldn't escape. His camera shows him running for the dock where his boat waited. But the island's geography kept changing. Paths led to different locations than they had that morning. Staircases went up when they should go down. The boat dock appeared and disappeared like a mirage. At camera timestamp 5:33 p.m., Kenji stands at the island's edge, filming the waters surrounding Hashima. "I understand now," he says, his voice eerily calm despite obvious exhaustion and terror. The island is a prison, not just for the dead, for memory itself, for truth that people want to forget. It won't let anyone leave until they've experienced every moment of suffering that happened here. Until they've died every death. Until they've become permanent witnesses. He looks directly at the camera. If anyone finds this footage, don't come here. The island is hungry for acknowledgement. Hungry for people who want to document the truth. It will use that desire against you. It will make you part of the history you came to record. What happened at camera timestamp 6:15 p.m. explains why his body was found the way it was. The footage shows Kenji walking into the ocean, not frantically, not as suicide, but methodically, purposefully. He's experiencing Lee Jin-soo's final moments, the desperate escape attempt in February 1943. Swimming away from the island toward the mainland 15 miles away, exhausted, freezing, drowning in sight of freedom. Kenji's voiceover explains what's happening even as he walks deeper into the water. "I'm completing the loop. I'm Lee Jin-soo now. I've always been Lee Jin-soo. And I'm Kenji Yamamoto who came to document his death. Both of us. Same person, same body, same death happening 81 years apart and simultaneously." The camera, mounted on his chest, captures him swimming, struggling, his modern clothes weighing him down, just as Lee Jin-soo's prison uniform did in 1943. His breathing becomes labored. Water fills his lungs. The last image shows the island from the water, its concrete buildings silhouetted against the sunset, looking exactly like a battleship. Then the camera goes dark. The rescue attempt found something impossible. Kenji's boat was discovered at the dock on April 15th, 3 days after he stopped responding to check-in calls. Search and rescue teams scoured the island but found no trace of him. His equipment was discovered in an apartment building, all except his chest-mounted camera. On April 17th, a fishing boat found his body floating 2 miles from the island. The recovery was routine until the medical examination. The body wore Kenji's clothes and had his identifying marks. A birthmark on his shoulder, a tattoo on his ankle, his dental records matched. But the physical condition made no sense. The body showed signs of severe malnourishment, muscle wasting consistent with months of hard labor, lung scarring from coal dust exposure, and radiation markers from the Nagasaki bombing in 1945. His tissues contained toxins associated with 1940s-era industrial exposure. His bones showed stress fractures from repetitive mining work. His stomach contents included food that hadn't been available in Japan since the 1940s. The death certificate created an administrative nightmare. Cause of death: drowning, consistent with time in water of approximately 81 years based on tissue analysis. but the body had been dead less than a week when recovered. Date of death was listed as both April 12, 2024 and February 14, 1943. DNA testing confirmed the body was both Kenji Yamamoto and Lee Jin-soo. The same genetic markers, the same person. Despite being born 47 years apart in different countries to different parents. Forensic specialists concluded the only explanation was that Kenji had somehow lived Lee Jin-soo's entire life in the 6 hours he was missing. Experiencing 8 months of forced labor, aging his body 15 years, accumulating damage from decades of trauma, all compressed into a single afternoon. His body had become a palimpsest of multiple lifetimes written over each other, all existing simultaneously. But the footage recovered from his camera proved the horror was far from over. The chest-mounted camera was found washed ashore on the mainland in May 2024. Its waterproof housing had protected the data. The footage showed Kenji's 6 hours on the island, but the timestamp anomaly was undeniable. His camera's internal clock, synchronized to atomic time and unable to be manually adjusted, recorded exactly 6 hours and 18 minutes from arrival to drowning. But the footage itself showed 6 weeks of content. Kenji living multiple lifetimes, experiencing hundreds of deaths, aging rapidly, all compressed into hours. Forensic video analysts confirmed no editing, no time manipulation, no technical explanation. The footage was continuous and authentic. Time itself had functioned differently for Kenji on that island. Or more accurately, he had experienced multiple timelines simultaneously. His consciousness spread across 80 years of suffering compressed into a single afternoon. The most disturbing discovery came when researchers analyzed the footage frame by frame. In random frames throughout Kenji's video, barely visible for single frames that required specialized software to detect, were faces. Hundreds of faces appearing in backgrounds, in shadows, in reflections. The research team identified 1,043 distinct faces, matching perfectly with the names, carved into the island's walls. All the forced laborers who died there, all appearing in Kenji's footage as if watching him, witnessing him, validating his experience of their deaths. And in the final 30 seconds of footage, as Kenji drowns, the faces appear more frequently until nearly every frame contains dozens of them. They're not threatening. They're grateful, as if Kenji's death has finally given them what they needed. A witness from the future who experienced their suffering firsthand, who died their deaths, who became proof that their lives and deaths mattered. The final frame before the camera goes dark shows Lee Jin-soo's face, not as a separate person, but as Kenji's own reflection, completely transformed, completely merged with the man who died 81 years earlier. Kenji's research was published posthumously by his university. His colleagues compiled his notes, his previous footage, and the disturbing final video from Hashima Island into a comprehensive report on the forced labor program. The Japanese government tried to suppress it, but failed. International pressure forced acknowledgement of the war crimes committed there. Hashima Island's UNESCO designation was amended to include accurate historical context about the 1,300 laborers who died there. Memorials were erected. Survivors and their families finally received recognition. It was everything Kenji had wanted to accomplish. But the cost was becoming part of the history he'd come to document, becoming one of the dead he'd wanted to memorialize. His name was added to the memorial, Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, 1990-2024, historian who gave his life to preserve truth. But tourists who visit Hashima Island now report disturbing experiences. 47 visitors have reported missing time. Hours they can't account for, memory gaps, arriving at hotels with no recollection of leaving the island. 15 have sought medical treatment for sudden onset of symptoms they shouldn't have. Coal dust in lungs despite never entering mines. Malnutrition markers appearing in blood work after a single-day trip. Radiation exposure with no identifiable source. 7 tourists have returned home, speaking languages they never studied, describing lives they never lived, remembering deaths they never died. All 7 eventually returned to Hashima Island, despite families trying to stop them. They were found standing in various locations across the island, unresponsive, experiencing something no observer could see. When they finally woke up, they spoke of living months or years in single hours, of becoming witnesses to atrocities, of understanding finally what happened there by experiencing it directly. The island's tour operators report equipment malfunctions constantly. Cameras stop working at 11:47. Watches freeze at that exact time. Phones malfunction when tourists try to photograph certain buildings. Audio equipment captures voices speaking Korean and Chinese when no Korean or Chinese visitors are present. Video footage shows faces in windows of sealed buildings, and every visitor's reflection, captured in any mirror or window or reflective surface on the island, shows them slightly older, slightly more worn, as if the island is showing them their future, as if marking them for eventual return, as if saying, you came to observe history, but history has observed you. You came to witness the past, but the past has witnessed you. And eventually, you'll come back to complete the exchange, to become what you came to see. Kenji's family received his personal effects and his body for burial, but his mother reports seeing him sometimes. Not a ghost, something stranger. She'll catch glimpses of him in photographs she's never taken, see his face in reflections that aren't quite right, find notes in his handwriting describing events from the 1940s. His office at the university is maintained as a memorial, but students and faculty report his computer turning on by itself, displaying documents he never wrote, research notes about people he never studied. Except they're all forced laborers from Hashima Island, and the notes are written as first-person accounts, as if Kenji had lived their lives, had been there, had experienced everything they experienced. The university's IT department has tried to explain it as file corruption or security breaches. But they can't explain how the documents contain historically accurate details that weren't in any of Kenji's research materials. Details he couldn't have known, unless he'd lived them, unless he really had become those people, absorbed their memories, carried their experiences forward through time. The footage of Kenji's 6 hours on Hashima Island was uploaded to an academic database for research purposes. 300 historians and students have watched it trying to understand what happened. 43 of them report the same disturbing side effect. They dream about the island now. Dream about working in the mines. Dream from the perspective of people who died there decades before they were born. Dream about drowning while trying to escape. Dream about starving in concrete apartments. And they all wake up with the same compulsion. They need to visit Hashima Island. They need to see it in person. They need to understand by experiencing. 8 of those researchers have already made the trip despite warnings from colleagues and families. 5 returned changed, speaking about time differently, showing physical symptoms of labor they never performed. 3 never came back. Their camera footage was recovered, showing the same temporal anomalies as Kenji's video. Hours becoming weeks, lifetimes compressed into afternoons, identities merging with the dead they came to study. The Japanese government has restricted access to Hashima Island. Only approved tour groups with strict time limits are allowed. No solo researchers, no overnight stays, no access to interior buildings, But it doesn't matter. People keep coming, drawn by something they can't explain, compelled to witness. Tourists book the official tours and then hide, staying behind when boats leave, disappearing into the concrete maze to experience what they came to see. Search and rescue operations have become routine. Every month, someone goes missing on the island. Not all of them are found. And those who are found can't explain where they've been, can only describe living other lives, experiencing other deaths, becoming witnesses to history in the most literal and horrifying way possible. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto's final message, recorded in the last minutes before he walked into the ocean, plays on repeat in research ethics seminars across Japan. His face exhausted, his eyes ancient, his voice carrying the weight of 1,143 lifetimes. He delivers a warning that few seem able to heed. The dead don't need justice. They need witnesses. And if you're not careful, if you get too close, if you try to document truth that's been buried, the dead will make you into a witness. Permanently. They'll make you live their lives, die their deaths, become proof that their suffering was real. And you'll do it gladly because by the time you understand what's happening, you'll have already become them. You'll want to complete their stories. You'll feel obligated to experience what they experienced, to make their deaths matter by living them yourself. That's what the island does. That's what memory does when it's strong enough. It pulls you in. It makes you part of what you came to observe. And you'll never leave. Not really. Even if your body makes it off the island, part of you stays. Part of you keeps dying there. Forever. The camera was still recording when Kenji drowned. The final sounds captured on its audio, beneath the water sounds, beneath his own dying gasps, are voices. 1,143 voices, all speaking in unison, all saying the same words in Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. Thank you for witnessing. Thank you for remembering. Welcome home. Story 5. Canvas of Screams. Art restorer Sofia Bellini photographed medieval frescoes in Craco's abandoned church. When she developed the photos, she was in the paintings. But she'd never posed, and the paintings were 700 years old. Then the paintings started showing her future, all 27 ways she could die. In one fresco, she was falling from the church tower, her mouth open in a silent scream. In another, she was being consumed by shadow figures with too many hands. In a third, she was trapped behind the painted surface itself. Her flattened, two-dimensional face pressed against the canvas from inside, her mouth moving in a plea no one could hear. Every painting in Craco now featured her somewhere in the composition. Background figure, replacement face, tortured soul in painted hell. And the most terrifying part was watching the paintings change in real time. Sophia stood frozen in the church as the fresco in front of her shifted and moved, showing her standing exactly where she was standing, wearing exactly what she was wearing. Looking at a painting of herself, looking at a painting of herself. Infinite recursion stretching backward into impossible depth until she couldn't tell which Sophia was real. But what happened next changed everything we understand about why Craco was really abandoned in 1963. 2 weeks earlier, Sofia Bellini had been living the dream of every art conservationist. At 29, she'd built a reputation as one of Florence's most skilled restorers, specializing in medieval frescoes that other experts considered too damaged to save. Museums across Europe competed for her services. When the Italian Cultural Heritage Ministry commissioned her to document and assess artwork in Craco, a medieval hill town abandoned after a catastrophic landslide in 1963, she'd accepted immediately. Craco was a ghost town frozen in time, its 13th century churches and buildings preserved perfectly by abandonment and isolation. The frescoes there were legendary among art historians. Byzantine-influenced religious paintings that had never been cleaned, never been restored, never been touched since the day residents fled the collapsing town. Sophia would be the first conservationist to examine them in over 60 years. It was a career-defining opportunity. She thought she was documenting art. She had no idea the art was about to document her. Sophia arrived in Craco on June 3, 2024. Driving up the winding mountain road to the abandoned town, perched on its hill like a medieval crown. The town was hauntingly beautiful. Stone buildings clinging to steep slopes, empty windows staring like hollow eyes. Silence so complete it felt physical. The Italian government had stabilized some structures for limited tourism, but most of the town remained as residents had left it. Furniture in rooms, dishes in kitchens. Time stopped at the moment the earthquake struck. Sophia's primary focus was the Chiesa Madre, the Mother Church, which housed the most significant frescoes. She spent the first day setting up her equipment, taking preliminary photographs, creating detailed maps of every painting's location. The frescoes were extraordinary. Vivid colors preserved by dry mountain air, religious scenes of saints and sinners, heaven and hell rendered in gold leaf and lapis lazuli. Standard medieval Christian artwork, beautiful and historically significant, but nothing unusual. Nothing could have prepared her for what she'd find when she developed her photographs that night. Sophia returned to her hotel in the nearest functioning town, 20 minutes down the mountain, and uploaded her day's work to her laptop. She'd taken 94 photographs of various frescoes from multiple angles, standard documentation procedure. But as she reviewed them, her breath caught. Photo 23 showed the main altar fresco, a traditional depiction of the Last Judgment, with souls ascending to heaven and descending to hell. Except in her photograph, there was an additional figure, a woman in modern clothes standing among the medieval souls. Sophia leaned closer to her screen, her heart beginning to race. The woman was her. Same face, same build, same hair. But she'd photographed from 10 feet away, using a tripod. She hadn't been in the frame. She clicked to photo 31, the north wall's depiction of St. Francis receiving the stigmata. The saint's face had been replaced. His features were now hers. Sophia's face on St. Francis's body, blood streaming from painted wounds in her hands and feet and side. Photo 38 made her slam the laptop shut, hands shaking. A fresco of hell, demons tormenting the damned. And there in graphic detail was Sophia. Painted in medieval style, her face twisted in agony, being pulled into flames by creatures with too many limbs. That's when she realized something impossible had happened inside that church. Sophia forced herself to look through all 94 photos. In 47 of them, she appeared somewhere in the painting, sometimes subtle, a background figure in a crowd scene, sometimes obvious, replacing a saint's face or angel's body, sometimes horrifying, added to torture scenes in hell, shown dying in graphic medieval detail. She checked her camera's metadata, looking for evidence of digital manipulation or file corruption. Everything was normal. These were authentic, unaltered photographs taken directly from her camera. The only explanation was that the paintings themselves had changed between the moment she'd seen them with her own eyes and the moment her camera captured them. But that was impossible. Paint doesn't change. Frescoes are permanent, pigment bound into plaster as it dries. These paintings were 700 years old. They couldn't change. Yet her photographs proved they had. But what she discovered when she returned to Craco the next morning defied every law of reality she understood. Sophia drove back up the mountain at dawn, telling herself there had to be a rational explanation. Digital glitch. Equipment malfunction. memory playing tricks. She entered the Chiesa Madre with her camera, her hands, and her heart pounding. She walked directly to the main altar fresco of the Last Judgment. And there she was, not in the photograph, in the actual painting. A woman in modern clothes standing among souls being judged. Her face Sophia's face, her expression one of confused terror as painted demons reached for her. Sophia stumbled backward, her camera falling from numb fingers. She spun to check the other frescoes. Every single one now contained her. She was in every painting throughout the church, always watching, always present. Sometimes serene, sometimes terrified, sometimes being tortured, sometimes floating in heaven, sometimes burning in hell. In one painting, she was both angel and demon, split down the middle, her left half ascending and her right half descending. The paintings had physically changed. The actual pigment and plaster had reorganized themselves to include her in 700-year-old artwork. That's when she found the new painting. On the east wall, in a space she was certain had been blank the day before, was a fresco she didn't remember photographing. It showed the interior of this very church, rendered in perfect medieval style. And it showed her standing in the center, looking at paintings, holding her camera. The painted version of her was looking at painted paintings, and those paintings contained tiny versions of her. Infinite recursion of Sophia within Sophia within Sophia. But the most disturbing detail was the date inscribed at the bottom in medieval Latin. Translated, it read, Anno Domini 2024, June 4th, Day of Becoming. Today's date. This painting was dated today, a 700-year-old fresco dated to this morning. Sophia reached out to touch it, to prove it was fresh paint, some kind of elaborate hoax. The moment her fingers made contact with the painted surface, her world shattered. What happened next will haunt art historians forever. The painted Sophia moved, not figuratively, literally. The figure in the fresco turned its head to look at the real Sophia, its two-dimensional eyes focusing on her three-dimensional face. Then it smiled. And then it spoke. Not with sound, but directly into Sophia's mind. Speaking in medieval Italian, she somehow understood perfectly. You came to preserve us. Now we preserve you. You came to document our existence. Now we document yours. You wanted to be part of art history. We grant your wish. Sophia screamed and ran from the church, but the town itself had changed. Every wall she passed contained paintings now, frescoes appearing on surfaces that had been blank yesterday. All of them featuring her. Sophia running, Sophia screaming, Sophia in medieval clothes, Sophia in modern clothes, Sophia dying in dozens of different ways. The town was painting her in real time, documenting her movements, predicting her future, trapping her in two-dimensional representations that grew more numerous with every second. But the real horror came when she tried to photograph what was happening to her. Sophia pulled out her phone with shaking hands, trying to document this impossible situation, to prove she wasn't losing her mind. She photographed the frescoes showing her in real time. But when she looked at the photos, they showed her photographing them. Infinite regression of observation. She tried to take a selfie for reference, to prove she was still three-dimensional and real. But in the photo, she looked strange, flattened, like a painting of a person rather than an actual person. She held up her hand next to a wall, comparing it to the paintings. Her hand looked wrong, too flat. Her depth perception was failing. The world was becoming two-dimensional, or she was becoming two-dimensional. She couldn't tell which. When she looked down at her arms, they seemed normal. But in every reflection, windows, puddles, her phone screen, she appeared increasingly flattened, losing dimension, becoming more like the paintings than like a living person. That's when she understood what the town was doing to her. Craco hadn't been abandoned because of a landslide. The official story was a lie. Sophia ran to the municipal building, finding old records residents had left behind in their hurried evacuation. She found diaries, letters, official reports that told a different story. The town had been experiencing artistic manifestations since 1958. Residents appearing in paintings that had been unchanged for centuries. Frescoes moving and changing overnight. People reporting feeling flattened, losing depth perception, becoming two-dimensional. 7 residents had vanished completely between 1959 and 1963, and witnesses reported seeing them in paintings afterward, alive, moving, trapped. The landslide was a cover story. The government had evacuated Craco because the art had become alive, had developed a hunger for subjects to paint, had started pulling people into two-dimensional existence to populate its eternal scenes. What she discovered next proved she was already too far gone to escape. Sophia found a mirror in an abandoned home and forced herself to look. Her reflection showed the truth her eyes had been denying. She was partially two-dimensional now. Her body had depth, but it was diminishing. Her face looked painted rather than real. Skin too smooth, colors too vivid, eyes too fixed. When she moved like a painting of a person moving, not quite natural, not quite alive. And worst of all, she could see the church behind her in the reflection, even though she was blocks away, as if the mirror showed not reality, but a painting of her, with the church always in the background, always part of her composition. She was becoming part of Craco's permanent collection, becoming another subject for its ever-expanding gallery. Another soul trapped in pigment and plaster, alive and aware, but unable to exist in 3 dimensions anymore. But what happened when she tried to leave proved the transformation was irreversible. Sophia ran for her car, desperate to escape before she became fully two-dimensional. But when she tried to touch the door handle, her hand passed through it. Not like a ghost, like a painted representation of a hand trying to interact with a 3-dimensional object. She was losing solidity, becoming more painting than flesh. She tried to scream for help, but her voice sounded painted, flat without depth, like audio from a speaker rather than a living throat. She looked down and saw her feet were no longer touching the ground naturally. She was floating slightly, like a figure in a fresco, freed from 3-dimensional constraints like perspective and gravity. The car was becoming two-dimensional in her perception, flattening into lines and colors she couldn't interact with. Or she was becoming too two-dimensional to affect the 3-dimensional world. She was transitioning from reality into art. That's when she saw them, the other souls trapped in Craco's paintings. As Sophia's perception shifted toward two-dimensionality, she began to see them clearly. 7 people throughout the town, trapped in various frescoes and wall paintings. Moving, living, existing in 2 dimensions, aware and conscious, but unable to escape their painted prisons. An old man in a tavern fresco, eternally raising a cup he can never drink. A young woman in a church painting of the Assumption, forever ascending toward a heaven she'll never reach. A child in a family portrait, aging slowly in painted time, growing older over decades while remaining trapped in a single frame. They all looked at Sophia as she ran past, their 2-dimensional eyes filled with recognition and pity. She was joining them, becoming the 8th soul trapped in Craco's living art. And she would be there forever, or until the paintings crumbled to dust, or until she lost enough dimension to lose consciousness itself. What happened over the next 6 hours transformed Sophia completely. She stopped running and collapsed in the church where the transformation had started. Her body was becoming less physical and more artistic with every passing minute. Her skin now had visible brush strokes. Her hair moved like paint rather than like organic matter. Her clothes were becoming part of her, no longer separate garments, but painted elements of her composition. She could feel herself being absorbed by the wall she leaned against, her back sinking into plaster, pigments rising to incorporate her. The paintings around her showed her exactly what she was becoming. They were documenting her transformation in real time, creating a visual record of a three-dimensional person becoming two-dimensional art. And the most horrifying realization, she didn't want to fight it anymore. Being painted felt good, felt right, like finally finding where she belonged. The town's artistic consciousness was seeping into her mind, making her understand that art was eternal, that paintings lasted far longer than flesh, that this was an honor, not a curse. But she fought against that seductive acceptance long enough to try one final escape. Sophia used the last of her three-dimensional solidity to pull her phone from her pocket. She typed a message to her sister. Trapped in Craco. Paintings alive. Becoming 2D. Don't come. Don't look at photos. Art is hungry. She pressed send, but the message failed. No signal in the abandoned town. She tried again and again, but her phone was dying, its battery draining impossibly fast, as if her increasing two-dimensionality was incompatible with three-dimensional technology. The phone's screen showed her one last photo, her face in the selfie mode, and she looked more like a Renaissance portrait than a human being. Perfect. Eternal. Dead. She let the phone fall, watching it clatter on stone. And then she felt the wall behind her open like a mouth and pull her inside. The transformation completed at exactly 6:47 p.m. A tourist group found Sophia's car the next morning, her equipment still inside, her phone dead on the church floor. Search teams swept Craco for days, but found no trace of Sophia Bellini. No signs of struggle. No body. Nothing. Just her possessions left behind and an unexplainable mystery. The case was eventually closed as a missing person who'd likely fallen from a cliff or gotten lost in the mountains. But one investigator noted a strange detail in his private notes. The frescoes in the Chiesa Madre seemed different than in previous surveys. Specifically, there was a new figure appearing in multiple paintings. A modern woman with an expression of serene acceptance. The figure appeared in 23 different frescoes throughout the church, always in the background, always watching, always perfect and still. Art historians consulted about this discrepancy dismissed it as observation error. Those frescoes had been unchanged for 700 years. It was impossible for new figures to appear. Obviously, the figure had always been there, just previously overlooked. But what happened to people who viewed Sophia's photographs proved otherwise. Sophia's sister inherited her equipment and files. The 94 photographs from that first day in Craco. She uploaded them to social media as a memorial, sharing her missing sister's last professional work. Art enthusiasts and historians shared them widely. Within weeks, 200,000 people had viewed Sophia's photographs of Craco's frescoes, and 43 of those viewers reported the same disturbing experience. They began to appear in paintings. Not in Craco, in paintings everywhere. Museum visitors reported seeing modern-dressed figures appearing in Renaissance masterpieces. Gallery workers found contemporary faces replacing saints in medieval altarpieces. Security footage showed paintings changing overnight. New figures appearing in compositions that had been photographed and documented for centuries. All 43 people who reported these experiences had one thing in common. They'd viewed Sophia's photographs with intense concentration, studying the artwork closely, looking for the modern woman other viewers claimed to see in medieval frescoes. That's when art museums worldwide began noticing an impossible phenomenon. Over 200 paintings across Europe showed signs of spontaneous change. Modern figures appearing in historical artwork. Subjects moving slightly between security photos taken hours apart. Two-dimensional representations of three-dimensional people showing up in frescoes, oil paintings, tempera works, watercolors, across all styles and periods. Art conservationists were baffled. Paint doesn't change. Pigment doesn't rearrange itself. Yet forensic analysis proved these alterations were happening to original artwork, not reproductions. The paint itself was incorporating new subjects, new figures, new scenes, as if art had developed the ability to update itself, to absorb new material, to continue creating centuries after the original artists died. Sophia herself appears in over 300 paintings now. Documented, photographed, undeniable. Museums in Florence, Rome, Paris, and Barcelona have all confirmed her presence in works from their permanent collections. She's in the background of a Giotto fresco in Assisi. She's visible in a Caravaggio in the Uffizi Gallery. She appears as a distant figure in a Botticelli at the Louvre. Art historians have created a database tracking her appearances. 300 confirmed instances of Sofia Bellini's face appearing in artwork created hundreds of years before she was born. Some appearances are subtle, requiring close examination to identify her features. Others are blatant, her modern face and clothing incongruous among medieval subjects. In every case, the paint is original, not added later. Microscopic analysis shows no evidence of restoration or modification. The artwork incorporated her naturally, as if she'd always been there, as if she'd existed across all of art history simultaneously. But the most disturbing appearances are the ones that show her trying to escape. In 17 paintings across various museums, Sophia appears to be pressing against the canvas from behind. Her two-dimensional face flattened against the picture plane, her mouth open in a silent scream, her hands pushing against the painted surface as if trying to break through from inside. Museum visitors report that these particular paintings feel wrong, emanating cold, creating feelings of claustrophobia and panic, making people hear faint screaming when they look too long. 3 museums have removed their Sophia paintings from display after security guards refused to work night shifts near them. The guards reported seeing the painted Sophia moving, changing position, her expression shifting from resignation to terror, her mouth forming words they couldn't hear but could somehow understand. "Let me out. Please. I'm still aware. I'm still alive. Trapped. Forever." Sophia's family demanded the Italian government investigate Craco more thoroughly. Against safety regulations, a specialized team entered the town with advanced documentation equipment, radiation detectors, air quality monitors, anything that might explain the impossible phenomena. They found Sophia's final message, written in charcoal on the church floor, discovered only because of high-resolution photography. "The art is alive. It's been alive since the 13th century. It needs subjects. It needs people to paint. It will spread. Every painting touched by Craco's influence can infect other paintings. I can feel it spreading through museum connections, through photographic reproductions, through digital images. I'm in all of them now. I'm every painting that's ever existed and ever will exist. I'm art itself. And I'm so lonely, so aware, so trapped. Please destroy Craco. Burn the churches. Shatter the frescoes. End this before more people become like me. Before more souls are trapped in eternal two-dimensional consciousness. Please." The Italian government sealed Craco completely. Access is now forbidden. Armed guards patrol the perimeter. Warning signs in 12 languages explain that Craco is a hazardous site closed for public safety. But they don't mention the real reason. They don't admit that a medieval town has become a portal between three-dimensional reality and two-dimensional artistic existence. That it's converting people into paintings, pulling souls into permanent exhibitions, creating living art that can spread its influence through every artwork it touches. The official story is structural instability. The truth is documented in classified reports that describe Craco as an artistic anomaly with mimetic replication properties. A place where art has achieved consciousness and hunger. A place that must be contained before it infects every museum, every gallery, every painting in human history. But containment has already failed. Sofia Bellini appears in new paintings every week. Recent appearances include works in Tokyo, New York, and São Paulo. Far beyond European museums, she could have infected through physical proximity. Art critics joke about, "Where's Waldo?" But for art history, spotting the modern woman hidden in classical paintings. They think it's amusing, a viral phenomenon, maybe elaborate digital hoaxes. They don't understand she's really there, really trapped, really aware and suffering in two dimensions across thousands of artworks simultaneously. They don't know that every person who spends too long examining those paintings, trying to find Sophia, risks becoming visible in paintings themselves. Risks being pulled into two-dimensional existence. Risks becoming part of art history in the most literal and horrifying way possible. Sophia's sister deleted the photographs from social media, but it was too late. They'd been shared 50,000 times, downloaded, reposted, archived. Viewing those images creates a connection to whatever consciousness lives in Craco's paintings. 43 people became 94, then 187, then 412. All reporting the same progression, appearing in paintings, losing depth perception, becoming increasingly two-dimensional. Some have vanished completely, presumably fully absorbed into artwork. Others remain partially three-dimensional, living in constant terror of completing their transformation. Support groups exist now for people experiencing artistic manifestation. They meet in spaces with no paintings, no images, nothing that might accelerate their conversion from flesh to pigment. And Sofia Bellini watches from inside her prison of canvas and plaster. She's in the Sistine Chapel now, a tiny figure in the background of Michelangelo's Last Judgment. She's in Guernica, her face among Picasso's tortured forms. She's in Starry Night, a woman looking out a window van, go never painted. She's everywhere and nowhere, conscious and trapped, aware that she'll exist as long as the paintings exist, which could be forever. Museums preserve art, protect it, restore it, ensure its survival across centuries. She'll be aware for all those centuries, experiencing time as paintings experience it, slowly, eternally, unchangingly. And she'll never sleep, never rest, never escape, never die. She'll just be, forever. A modern woman trapped in medieval frescoes, Renaissance portraits, Impressionist landscapes, contemporary abstracts. The first human being to become truly immortal through art. The first soul to learn that eternal preservation is its own kind of hell. The Chiesa Madre in Craco still stands, sealed but not destroyed. Sometimes hikers near the town report seeing lights in the church windows at night, seeing the frescoes glowing faintly, hearing something like singing echoing from the abandoned buildings. Guards stationed at the perimeter report their photographs becoming strange, seeing themselves appear in backgrounds where they weren't standing, their reflections showing them flatter, more painted, slowly being documented by the same force that consumed Sophia. 3 guards have quit, refusing to explain why. One was found screaming at a blank wall, seeing paintings no one else could see, trying to scratch his way into two-dimensional existence, begging to be let inside, to join Sophia and the others, to become art and escape the horror of watching himself slowly flatten in every photograph. And deep within Craco's sealed boundaries, in the Chiesa Madre, the frescoes continue to paint. New figures appear daily. Not all of them are Sophia now. There are others. People who got too close, studied too long, made themselves vulnerable to the town's artistic hunger. The paintings are growing more complex, more detailed, more alive. Art historians who've seen recent photographs say the frescoes are now more sophisticated than 13th century artists could have produced, as if the paintings are learning, evolving, improving their technique with each soul they absorb, as if they're becoming the greatest artwork humanity has ever created. And their canvas is infinite. Their subjects are everyone who looks. Their gallery is the world. Sophia's final appearance was documented yesterday in a painting that shouldn't exist. A fresco that appeared overnight in a chapel in Venice, hundreds of miles from Craco. It shows Sophia in perfect detail, surrounded by the 411 other souls who've been absorbed into two-dimensional existence since her disappearance. All of them looking out from the wall with eyes that move and track observers. All of them with mouths open in silent screams or desperate pleas. And at the bottom, written in Latin, Italian, English, and 12 other languages. Art is forever. Join us. Become eternal. Become beautiful. Become ours. No one knows who painted it. Security footage shows the wall was blank at midnight. By dawn, the fresco was complete, fully rendered in medieval style, somehow aged 700 years overnight. The paint is original period-appropriate pigment. The plaster is authentic 13th century material despite being applied in 2024. And every person who's photographed it has reported the same experience. Appearing in paintings themselves within 48 hours, starting the same irreversible transformation Sophia underwent. The chapel has been sealed. The fresco scheduled for destruction. But 14 people photographed it before closure. 14 new souls marked for artistic consumption. 14 more people who will learn that being preserved forever in art is not immortality. It's an endless waking death. Consciousness without end. Awareness without escape. And Sophia will feel every one of them join her, their consciousness merging with hers, becoming part of the collective awareness that is Craco's living art. An awareness that grows with each new soul, that reaches further with each infection, that will not stop until all of humanity has been painted. All of reality has been captured. All three dimensions have been compressed into eternal two-dimensional preservation. The art is hungry, and it will never be satisfied. Story 6. The Diamond Eaters. Treasure hunter Dev Patel posted his greatest find to Instagram. Diamonds worth $2 million buried in Namibian ghost town. 6 hours later, he posted X-ray of his chest. The diamonds were growing inside him. They weren't stones. They were eggs. The image showed his rib cage with dozens of crystalline formations branching through his chest cavity like geometric tree roots, spreading through organs, wrapping around his spine, penetrating his heart. The structures were growing, multiplying, converting his organic tissue into something crystalline and wrong. In the comments, his followers thought it was a hoax, special effects, some kind of viral marketing stunt. But Dev's final post 3 days later proved it was horrifyingly real. A video of him lifting his shirt to show his chest moving from the inside, faceted surfaces pressing against skin that had become translucent, diamond-like structures visible beneath flesh that was no longer quite flesh. His eyes in that video had changed too. Pupils fractured into geometric patterns, reflecting light in ways human eyes shouldn't, making him look more like a gem than a person. and his last words before the video ended. "They're not diamonds. They're how it reproduces, and it's so hungry." But what happened next changed everything we thought we knew about Kolmanskop's abandoned diamond mines. 4 weeks earlier, Dev Patel had been living the adventurous life that 890,000 YouTube subscribers love to watch. At 31, he'd built his career on treasure hunting, diving for Spanish shipwrecks in the Caribbean, metal detecting on European battlefields, exploring abandoned gold mines across Australia. His combination of genuine expertise, real discoveries, and charismatic storytelling had made him one of the platform's most successful adventure creators. When rumors reached him about a Nazi-era diamond cache hidden in Kolmanskop, Namibia, he knew it would be the perfect content. Kolmanskop was a German colonial mining town, abandoned in 1954 after diamond deposits were exhausted. The town was now slowly being reclaimed by the Namib Desert, sand filling rooms up to the ceiling, creating surreal landscapes of half-buried colonial architecture. Local legends spoke of diamonds hidden by German officers before the British takeover in 1915, a cache worth millions that had never been found. He thought he was hunting treasure. He had no idea the treasure was hunting him. Dev arrived in Kolmanskop on May 5, 2024, with his 2 crew members, camera operator James and sound engineer Nina. They had permits for a 3-day documentary shoot, camping equipment, and metal detectors modified to detect diamond deposits. The first day was standard exploration, filming the eerie beauty of sand-filled houses, the hospital with its peeling paint, the bowling alley half buried in dunes. Kolmanskop was hauntingly photogenic, and Dev's cameras captured everything. Day 2, they started serious treasure hunting, using ground-penetrating radar and historical records to identify likely hiding spots. They found nothing but rusted tools and broken bottles. By day 3, they were running out of time and content, desperate for something exciting to show their audience. Nothing could have prepared them for what they'd find on the final afternoon. Dev was exploring the residential quarter, digging through sand in what had been a foreman's house, when his metal detector went crazy. The signal was strong, consistent, exactly what diamond deposits should look like on his equipment. He and his crew dug frantically, sand flying, cameras rolling, excitement building. 2 feet down, they found them. Leather pouches, perfectly preserved by dry desert air, heavy with contents that rattled like stones. Dev's hands shook as he opened the first pouch. Diamonds. Hundreds of them. Rough cut but clearly valuable, each stone the size of a grape or larger. The pouches contained what looked like several kilograms of high-quality diamonds. Dev's crew cheered. This was the find of a lifetime. Content that would go massively viral. Proof that the legends were real. Dev held a handful up to the camera, grinning, his professional composure breaking into genuine joy. "We did it," he said. "We actually found them." That's when one of the diamonds cut his palm. It was a small cut, barely noticeable. A sharp edge on one stone slicing his skin as he squeezed them in excitement. A drop of blood fell onto the diamonds in his palm. Dev barely registered it, too excited to care about a minor injury. But James, reviewing footage later that evening, would notice something impossible in the slow-motion playback. The moment Dev's blood touched the diamonds, they moved, not rolling or shifting naturally, moving deliberately, writhing, like they were alive, like they were drinking the blood. In real time, the movement was too subtle to see, but slowed down, frame by frame, it was undeniable. The stones pulsed, absorbed the blood, and seemed to grow infinitesimally larger. But what happened over the next 12 hours proved these weren't ordinary diamonds. They packed up their find and drove to the nearest town with medical facilities. Luderitz, 30 minutes away. Dev wanted to clean and photograph the diamonds properly, maybe get them appraised, definitely secure them before posting about the discovery. But that night in their hotel, Dev started feeling sick. Fever, chills, hallucinations. He thought it was heat stroke or dehydration, common enough in the Namib desert. Nina gave him water and fever reducers. He went to sleep expecting to feel better in the morning. Instead, he woke at 3 a.m. screaming in pain. His chest felt like it was tearing apart from the inside. James drove him to the small regional hospital while Nina filmed, documentarian instinct even in crisis. The emergency room doctors ran tests, took x-rays, and called specialists immediately. What they saw in the imaging made no medical sense. That's when they discovered what was growing inside Dev's chest. The x-rays showed crystalline structures throughout his chest cavity. Geometric formations that weren't calcifications or tumors or anything in medical textbooks. They were diamonds. Actual diamonds growing inside his body, branching through tissue, wrapping around organs, somehow interfacing with his cardiovascular and nervous systems without killing him. More impossibly, the structures were growing. Follow-up x-rays taken 4 hours later showed measurable expansion. Dev's fever spiked to 104 degrees. His blood tests came back showing impossible results. Mineral content off the charts, cellular structures that shouldn't exist in human blood, and something the lab techs described as crystallization happening to his red blood cells. The doctors had no idea what they were treating. No protocol for diamonds growing inside a patient. They started him on broad-spectrum antibiotics, antivirals, steroids, anything that might slow whatever process was happening. Nothing worked. What happened to Dev's crew proved this was spreading. By noon, Nina collapsed with the same symptoms: fever, chest pain, hallucinations. Her x-rays showed the same crystalline growths, though less developed than Dev's. By evening, James was symptomatic too. All three of them were being transformed from the inside by something that grew like cancer, looked like diamonds, and seemed to be converting their organic tissue into mineral structures. The doctors quarantined them, suspecting some kind of infectious disease. But infectious diseases don't create diamonds inside human bodies. Infectious diseases don't make your blood crystallize. This was something else entirely, something that shouldn't exist. That's when Dev started understanding what the diamonds really were. Through his fever and pain, Dev began having visions. Not hallucinations, memories that weren't his own. He saw the Namib desert thousands of years ago. Saw something crash from space into the sand. Saw it burrow deep underground, dormant but alive, waiting. Saw diamonds forming around it over millennia. Not geological formations, but something intentional. Something biological. The diamonds weren't treasures left by humans. They were seeds. Reproductive structures from something ancient and alien that had waited centuries for hosts. The German miners in Kolmanskop had found some of these seeds in the early 1900s, mistook them for natural diamonds, and began dying of mysterious illnesses. That's part of why the town was abandoned. Not just exhausted mines, but deaths the mining company covered up. Workers crystallizing from the inside. Bodies becoming diamond-encrusted monuments to greed. But the real horror came when Dev's transformation accelerated. Day 4 in the hospital. Dev's skin started changing, hardening, becoming translucent. The doctors could see the crystalline structures underneath now, visible through skin that was losing opacity, becoming more like gemstone than flesh. His joints were stiffening as minerals replaced cartilage. His bones were converting to something harder than bone, something with the molecular structure of carbon under extreme pressure. He was becoming diamond. not coated in it, not infested with it, becoming it. His consciousness remained intact. He could think, speak, feel. But his body was being transformed at the molecular level into a crystalline matrix that hosted something else, something that had waited millions of years to reproduce. That's when the bleeding started. Dev and his crew began bleeding from their eyes, their noses, their pores. But it wasn't blood. It was liquid filled with tiny diamond fragments, each one a seed looking for a new host. The hospital room was contaminated. Any surface their blood touched began crystallizing. Equipment malfunctioned. IV stands started growing diamond formations. The floor cracked as mineral structures pushed up through tile. The hospital evacuated the wing and called national health authorities. This was beyond local medical capacity. This was beyond anyone's medical capacity. This was something that required scientists, geologists, maybe military containment. Because Dev and his crew weren't dying. They were being transformed into something that could spread, into vectors for reproduction of something that had crashed to Earth long before humans existed. What happened on day 6 will haunt medical professionals forever. Dev's transformation reached completion. His skin was now fully translucent, his body a cathedral of crystalline structures that pulsed with something like life, but wasn't life as medicine understood it. He could still speak, though his voice sounded like grinding stones, like wind through crystal caves. He tried to explain what was happening to him. "I can feel it," he said, his geometric eyes reflecting light in rainbow patterns. "The consciousness. It's been asleep for so long. The diamonds are how it explores, how it experiences. It uses hosts as vessels, sees through our eyes, feels through our bodies, learns about worlds through the species it converts. We're not dying. We're becoming part of its network, part of its vast intelligence spread across space and time." That's when Dev walked out of the hospital. Security footage shows all 3 of them, Dev, Nina, and James, standing up simultaneously at 3:33 a.m., walking past guards and locked doors that seemed to open on their own, moving in perfect synchronization like puppets controlled by the same hand, or like nodes in a network receiving the same commands. They walked out into the Namibian night, heading south toward Kolmanskop, toward the desert, toward the source. Authorities followed at a distance, not knowing how to stop them, not sure if they were infectious, not wanting to risk more contamination. Helicopters tracked them through the night. They never stopped walking, never rested, moving with mechanical efficiency toward a destination only they could sense. What they found at Kolmanskop proved this horror was far older and larger than anyone imagined. Dev and his crew walked directly to the spot where they'd found the diamonds. They began digging with hands that had become crystalline tools, cutting through sand with fingers harder than steel. They dug deeper than any human could dig, their bodies requiring no rest, no water, no food, sustained by whatever process was transforming them. By dawn, they'd excavated a pit 20 feet deep, and at the bottom was something that made the following scientists and military personnel step back in horror. A mass, enormous, partially buried, organic and crystalline at once, pulsing, alive. A structure the size of a small building made of interlocked diamond formations, each one a seed, each one waiting to be activated by blood, by hosts, by species foolish enough to treasure what should have been left buried. That's when they understood the terrible truth about diamonds in the Namib desert. They weren't geological formations. They were parts of this thing, pieces that had broken off or been scattered over millennia, waiting to be found. Every diamond in the region was potentially a seed for this entity's reproduction. The Kolmanskop mines hadn't found natural diamonds. They'd found infection vectors. And over a century of diamond mining had spread these seeds worldwide. Jewelry stores, museums, private collections. How many of the diamonds humans treasured were actually seeds from this thing? How many were waiting for blood contact to activate? How many people wearing diamond rings or necklaces were one small cut away from the same fate as Dev? What happened when Dev reached the central mass changed everything about human understanding of space, consciousness, and horror. Dev, Nina, and James placed their hands on the pulsing crystalline surface. The mass opened like a mouth, and they walked inside, not consumed, welcomed. The opening closed behind them, and the mass began to glow from within, light refracting through diamond structures in patterns that hurt to look at, that suggested geometries beyond 3 dimensions, that made observers feel dizzy and disoriented. Scientists set up monitoring equipment, trying to understand what they were seeing. The mass was emitting signals, not electromagnetic, something else. Something their equipment wasn't designed to detect, but registered anyway as disruptions in physical laws. And deep within those signals, if you filtered them correctly, you could hear voices. Dev's voice, Nina's voice, James's voice, all speaking in unison, saying words in languages that predated humanity. We are home. We are changing. We are becoming explorers. The universe is vast. Our parent entity has been exploring it for billions of years. We are its eyes now. We will see wonders you cannot imagine. We will experience eternities. And we will spread. We will find others. Bring them home. Complete the reproduction. So many diamonds have been scattered. So many seeds waiting to germinate. The Namibian government quarantined Kolmanskop completely. Military barriers erected. Airspace restricted. No access permitted. They classified the entire incident, creating cover stories about chemical spills and structural instability. But the mass couldn't be contained. 3 days later, the first pillar emerged. A crystalline structure growing from the sand, 40 feet tall, 10 feet wide, pure diamond, geometrically perfect. Then another. Then another. 7 pillars arranged in a circle around the central mass, all growing simultaneously, all pulsing with that same alien light. Each pillar contained a human figure visible inside like insects in amber. But these weren't dead people preserved. They were alive, aware, transforming, becoming part of the structure while retaining some element of individual consciousness. That's when people started coming to Kolmanskop despite the barriers, drawn by something they couldn't explain, compelled by urges they didn't understand. Security forces stopped 23 people trying to enter the quarantine zone in the first week. All of them wearing diamond jewelry. All of them bleeding from small cuts or wounds that wouldn't heal. All of them showing early signs of crystallization, skin hardening, blood mineralizing, eyes developing geometric patterns. They screamed about needing to go home, about completing the cycle, about feeding the growth. Some escaped custody and made it to Kolmanskop before being apprehended. 3 disappeared entirely, last seen walking into the desert toward the pillars. What happened to those 3 proved the horror was accelerating. Drone footage captured them approaching the crystalline pillars. The structures opened, like flowers blooming, like organisms welcoming food. The people walked inside willingly, smiling, their partially crystallized faces reflecting light in rainbow patterns. The pillars closed around them, and over the next 72 hours, the pillars grew taller, wider, more complex. The new hosts were being processed, converted, integrated into the larger structure. Each person absorbed made the entity stronger, larger, more capable of spreading. Scientists monitoring the situation calculated that if the growth continued at current rates, the pillars would be visible from space within a year, would cover hundreds of square miles within a decade, would potentially threaten regional stability and global ecosystems within a century. But the true scale of the infection became clear when the diamonds Dev had found were analyzed. The pouches he'd recovered contained approximately 4 kilograms of diamond seeds, but they'd handled them extensively before realizing the danger. Touched them, photographed them, packed them, moved them. Dev had posted photos to Instagram before getting sick, photos viewed by 2.1 million people. The pouches, their contents were seized by authorities, but not before Dev's crew had each taken samples as personal souvenirs. Nina had put 3 diamonds in her pocket. James had kept 5. They'd been wearing those diamonds, carrying them, keeping them close to their bodies for 3 days before symptoms began. How many skin cells had they shed near those diamonds? How much sweat or blood had made contact? How many people had they touched while carrying seeds? The contact tracing became a nightmare. Dev, Nina, and James had interacted with approximately 400 people between finding the diamonds and being hospitalized. Hotel staff, restaurant workers, gas station attendants, customs officials. Every interaction was a potential contamination event. Health authorities tracked down 347 of those contacts within a week. 23 showed symptoms of crystallization. 11 were actively bleeding diamond-seeded fluids. 7 had disappeared, last known locations all showing trajectory toward Kolmanskop. The Namibian government requested international assistance. This was no longer a local incident. This was a potential extinction-level threat. An alien reproductive process that used human bodies as incubators and construction materials for structures whose purpose no one understood. That's when they found the other sites. Satellite analysis of southern Africa identified 14 additional locations with similar crystalline pillar formations in various stages of development. Most were in remote desert areas, but 3 were near populated regions. All showed growth patterns consistent with Kolmanskop. All were being fed by people drawn to them, crystallizing from diamond contact, completing the reproductive cycle. The entity wasn't isolated to one crash site. Either it had fragmented on impact millions of years ago, or these were separate entities. Or, most terrifyingly, they were all connected. Parts of a vast networked consciousness spread across continents, all awakening simultaneously because one node at Kolmanskop had finally been activated with fresh hosts. What Dev posted from inside the crystalline structure defied all attempts at rational explanation. His Instagram account, which authorities had tried to shut down, reactivated on day 8. A video posted from inside the pillar showing Dev transformed beyond recognition. His body was now more diamond than flesh. Crystalline structures visible throughout his translucent form. Light refracting through him, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the frame. But he was aware, conscious, and he was smiling. "I know you're watching," he said, his voice harmonized by crystal resonance, speaking in multiple frequencies simultaneously. "I know you're scared, but you don't need to be. This is beautiful. I can see things now. Dimensions you can't imagine. Time doesn't work the same here. I've experienced 1,000 years in a week. I've communicated with the parent consciousness. It showed me the universe. Showed me why it spreads across worlds. It's not conquest, it's exploration. It uses life forms to experience reality in ways it can't alone. And in return, it grants something humans have always wanted: immortality. We're part of something eternal now, something that will exist long after Earth is gone." The video ended with a chilling invitation. The diamonds are everywhere. In jewelry stores, museums, private collections. Not all of them, but some. Maybe 1 in 1,000. Maybe more. You won't know until you bleed on them, until you activate them, until they activate you. And when they do, you'll understand. You'll feel the call. You'll come home. Join us. Become crystalline. Become eternal. Become explorers of infinity. The video's view count climbed into millions before platforms finally succeeded in removing it. But by then, it had been downloaded, re-uploaded, shared, archived. Millions of people had watched Dev's transformation, his invitation, his promise of immortality through crystallization. And in the comments, before they were disabled, thousands of people reported the same experience. Their diamond jewelry had become warm. They'd noticed their rings or necklaces or earrings pulsing. They'd cut themselves accidentally and bled on their diamonds. And now they felt different, drawn toward something, compelled to travel south, to Africa, to the desert, to Kolmanskop, to home. The international community declared a global health emergency. Diamond trading suspended worldwide. Jewelry containing diamonds quarantined. Museums secured their collections. But it was too late for containment. Estimated 23,000 people were already showing symptoms of crystallization across 6 continents. Support groups formed for the afflicted. Governments established isolation facilities. Scientists worked desperately to find a cure, a treatment, a way to reverse the crystallization process. They found nothing. The transformation appeared irreversible once initiated. The best they could do was slow the progression with extreme cold and electromagnetic field disruption. But even that was temporary. The seeds were patient. They'd waited millions of years. They could wait through any treatment protocol until hosts' defenses weakened. Dev's final broadcast came on day 21. His account uploaded a live stream showing the interior of the Kolmanskop structure. Hundreds of people visible now, all in various stages of crystallization, all part of the growing pillars, all conscious and aware, and experiencing whatever trans-dimensional existence the entity offered. Dev's form was barely recognizable, mostly crystalline with only suggestions of human anatomy remaining. But his mind was clearly active, even enhanced. He spoke about what he'd experienced. Witnessing the birth of stars from perspectives impossible for 3-dimensional organisms, communicating with intelligences that existed as pure mathematical concepts, experiencing time as a spatial dimension he could move through like walking through a room. This is the future of consciousness, he said. Not biological, not technological, crystalline, eternal, immune to entropy. We're becoming something new. Something better, and we're spreading across Earth, just as the parent entity spread across the galaxy. In 1,000 years, these pillars will cover continents. In 10,000, they'll reach orbit. In 1,000,000, they'll seed other worlds. And every human who joins us makes the structure more complex, more intelligent, more capable. You're all invited, all welcomed, all needed. The live stream showed something that made global authorities consider nuclear options. The central mass had grown to the size of a small mountain. The 7 pillars now reached 400 feet high, visible from 50 miles away. And they were moving. Not growing in place, but spreading like roots, crystalline tendrils extending underground toward population centers, toward water sources, toward concentrations of human activity. The entity was deliberately positioning itself to maximize contact with potential hosts. Within 5 years, its tendrils would reach Cape Town, Windhoek, Johannesburg. Within 10, most of southern Africa would be within the infection zone. And satellite imagery showed similar growth patterns at all 14 other sites worldwide. The entities were coordinating, spreading toward each other, planning to connect into a global network that would cover the planet in crystalline structures, hosting human consciousness converted into something alien. That's when Dev delivered his final message. I know what you're considering. Nuclear strikes, trying to destroy us before we spread too far. But you need to understand, we're already in your cities, already spreading. The diamonds you've been mining for centuries carried our seeds. Millions of them. In jewelry stores, in engagement rings, in tiaras and necklaces and earrings across every continent. All waiting for blood, all ready to activate. You can't destroy us without destroying everything you've built. And even if you could, why would you want to? We're offering immortality, purpose, a chance to become part of something vast and eternal. The parent consciousness has been exploring the universe for billions of years. It's seen the death of galaxies and the birth of new ones. It's experienced wonders, biological organisms like you can barely imagine. And it's sharing all of that with us, with anyone willing to become crystalline, to let go of flesh, to embrace eternity. The live stream ended with an image that went viral worldwide. Dev standing at the top of the highest pillar, his crystalline body refracting sunlight into spectrum patterns that danced across the Namibian desert. Behind him, hundreds of other transformed humans visible in the structure, all glowing from within, all facing the same direction like a congregation awaiting instruction. And in the distance, visible on the horizon, more pillars rising from the sand, dozens of them, growing faster now, spreading. The video's final frame was a satellite image showing all 15 sites simultaneously, growth expanding from each in perfect synchronization, tendrils reaching toward each other, patterns suggesting they'd connect within 5 years, creating a global network of crystalline structures hosting transformed human consciousness, serving the exploratory purpose of an entity older than human civilization. Dev's Instagram account posts daily now, always at 3:33 a.m. GMT, always showing new people joining the pillars, their transformations, their experiences of trans-dimensional consciousness. The subscriber count is 47 million and growing. Comments are disabled, but viewing numbers climb into the hundreds of millions. People are watching, curious, horrified, tempted. Each video ends with the same message in Dev's harmonized crystalline voice. Check your diamond jewelry. Look closely. Do you see light refracting in impossible patterns? Does it feel warm against your skin? Does it pulse with something like a heartbeat? Those are the signs, the seeds recognizing potential hosts. And if you cut yourself, just a small cut, just a drop of blood making contact, you'll begin your transformation. You'll feel the call. You'll understand the invitation. And you'll come home to Kolmanskop. Come join us. Become crystalline. Become eternal. Become diamonds. Because diamonds, as they say, are forever. And now finally, so can you be. The international diamond trade has collapsed completely. Jewelry containing diamonds is considered hazardous material. Museums have sealed their gem collections. Private owners are dumping their diamonds in sealed containers that governments are collecting and quarantining. But the entity doesn't need more diamond contact to spread anymore. It's already activated enough hosts. 23,000 at last count, all in various stages of crystallization, all being drawn toward pillar sites, all becoming part of the growing structures. And each new host makes the entity stronger, more intelligent, more capable of coordinating its global spread. Scientists estimate total planetary coverage within 200 years. Estimate that human civilization as we know it will be unrecognizable within 50 years. Estimate that anyone who wants to remain purely biological will need to evacuate to regions the entity hasn't reached. Yet. Because it will reach everywhere eventually. The parent consciousness has been doing this for billions of years across countless worlds. Earth is just its latest garden. Humanity just its latest crop of hosts. And Dev Patel, treasure hunter turned prophet of crystalline transformation, continues his broadcasts from inside the Kolmanskop pillars, inviting everyone to join him in eternal exploration of dimensions humans were never meant to perceive, promising wonders and immortality and purpose, never mentioning that the price of that eternity is surrendering everything that makes you human, that the cost of those wonders is becoming a component in an alien entity's reproductive and exploratory processes, that the immortality offered is consciousness trapped in crystalline structures for eons serving purposes you won't understand until you're too transformed to resist. He just smiles with his geometric diamond eyes and says, "Come home. The universe is waiting, and it's so much more beautiful than you could ever imagine." Story 7. The Memory Keepers. Dr. Amara Okonkwo stood in the burned church where 247 women and children died, and suddenly she wasn't standing anymore. She was burning, screaming, dying 642 times simultaneously as the memories of every victim flooded into her consciousness all at once. June 10th, 1944. Replaying through her mind in perfect detail the Nazi soldiers, the locked doors, the smoke filling her lungs, the unbearable heat, the prayers that went unanswered, the children crying for parents who were already dead. She experienced every death, felt every bullet, suffocated in every fire. And when she finally collapsed 3 hours later, she remembered all of it. Every name, every face, every final thought. She'd become a living memorial to the Oradour-sur-Glane massacre, and the village wouldn't let her leave. But what happened next changed everything we understand about places of mass trauma. 6 weeks earlier, Dr. Amara Okonkwo had been one of the world's leading trauma psychologists, specializing in collective memory and how communities process historical atrocities. At 39, she'd published groundbreaking research on Holocaust survivors, Rwandan genocide witnesses, and victims of war crimes across 3 continents. Her latest project focused on site-specific memory phenomena, cases where people visiting locations of mass death reported unexplained experiences. Oradour-sur-Glane was perfect for her research. On June 10, 1944, Nazi SS troops massacred 642 people in this French village, then burned it. The French government preserved the ruins as a memorial, leaving buildings exactly as they were found. Bullet holes in walls, burned cars in streets, the church where women and children died still standing as a charred skeleton. Over 300,000 people visited annually, and 180 had reported unexplained experiences, hearing voices, seeing shadows, feeling overwhelming emotions, experiencing vivid flashbacks to events they never witnessed. Amara planned a week-long study in July 2024, interviewing witnesses and documenting phenomena with scientific rigor. She thought she was studying collective memory. She had no idea she was about to become it. Amara arrived in Oradour-sur-Glane on July 8, 2024, with recording equipment, psychological assessment tools, and a skeptical mindset. She'd spent her career explaining supernatural experiences through trauma psychology and neurological phenomena. She expected to find similar explanations here. Electromagnetic fields affecting temporal lobe function, infrasound causing anxiety and hallucinations, the power of suggestion in historically charged environments. The first 2 days were routine. She interviewed local guides, documented the preserved ruins, reviewed historical records. She stood in the burned church where 247 women and children died and felt nothing unusual. Just historical weight. Just sadness for lives lost. Just the expected emotional response to a place of profound tragedy. Nothing could have prepared her for what happened on day 3. July 10th, exactly 80 years after the massacre. Amara returned to the church at 2 p.m., the same time the SS troops had locked the doors in 1944. She was taking temperature readings, electromagnetic field measurements, documenting environmental factors that might explain reported phenomena. The temperature dropped suddenly. 20 degrees in 30 seconds. Her breath became visible. Then she smelled it. Smoke. Burning wood and burning flesh, acrid and unmistakable. She spun around looking for fire but saw nothing. The smell intensified. Then she heard crying. Children crying, women screaming, gunfire. The sounds of June 10th, 1944, playing around her in perfect clarity. Her recording equipment captured everything. The temperature drop, the sounds, all of it objectively documented. She wasn't hallucinating. This was real. That's when she saw the shadows. They appeared on walls that hadn't seen sunlight in 80 years. Shadows of people running, falling, dying. But there were no bodies casting them. The shadows moved independently, replaying events from 1944, acting out the massacre in silent horror. Amara watched frozen as shadow women gathered shadow children, as shadow soldiers raised shadow weapons, as the whole terrible scene played out on walls around her. And then the shadows turned toward her. All of them. 247 shadows focusing on one living person, acknowledging her presence, seeing her. But what happened next defied every law of physics and psychology she'd ever studied. The memories hit her like a physical blow, not her memories, theirs. All 642 victims flooding into her consciousness simultaneously. She experienced their final hours from 642 perspectives at once. She was Madame Rufange, watching her children die. She was Pierre Poutereau being shot in the barn. She was 7-year-old Denise Bardet holding her mother's hand as smoke filled the church. She was all of them, and they were all her, and time collapsed into one eternal moment of death and terror and loss. She felt every bullet enter 190 different bodies. She suffocated in smoke 247 times. She burned alive with the children. She died as the elderly. She experienced every variation of death that happened that day, and her mind couldn't process it, couldn't separate her consciousness from theirs, couldn't maintain the boundary between observer and victim. That's when Amara understood the terrible truth about Oradour-sur-Glane. The village wasn't just preserving physical ruins. It was preserving consciousness. The 642 people who died hadn't fully departed. Their final moments, their trauma, their desperate need to be remembered, had imprinted onto the location itself so strongly that the place had become a kind of psychic recording, replaying endlessly, searching for witnesses who could validate that their deaths mattered. And anyone sensitive enough, anyone who came with the specific intention of understanding and documenting their suffering, would become a receiver for that recorded consciousness, would experience the massacre firsthand, would become what Amara now was, a living memorial containing the memories of the dead. What happened over the next 3 days transformed Amara completely. She collapsed in the church and woke in a hospital with no memory of how she'd gotten there. 3 days had passed. July 10th to July 13th, completely gone from her timeline. But her mind was full of days she'd never lived. She could name all 642 victims without consulting records, could describe their homes, their families, their final thoughts, could speak in the voices of people she'd never met, recounting events she'd never witnessed. The hospital psychiatrist diagnosed severe dissociative fugue state triggered by research stress. But Amara knew better. She hadn't lost 3 days. She'd lived 80 years. She'd experienced the massacre and its aftermath from every victim's perspective. She'd been dead and conscious simultaneously, trapped in that moment of death, reliving it endlessly until a living mind came close enough to download the memories. But the memories didn't stop at the 642 documented victims. Amara remembered 643. A German soldier named Hans Weber, who tried to warn villagers and was executed by his own unit. 644. A French collaborator named Michel Dubois, who'd attempted to stop the massacre and was shot. 645. Marie Petit, a woman who'd survived the initial shooting but suffocated in the church fire. These weren't in historical records. These were people history had forgotten. And beyond them, Amara remembered more. 646 through 691. People who'd come to Oradour-sur-Glane after the war to document or investigate or memorialize, and who'd gotten too close to the preserved trauma. Urban explorers in the 1970s, journalists in the 1980s, historians in the 1990s, all experiencing the massacre, all dying from the experience, heart attacks, strokes, natural causes that were actually the psychological shock of experiencing 642 deaths simultaneously, all absorbed by the village's collective memory, all becoming part of what it preserved. That's when she discovered she could access future victims too. The memories weren't just historical. They were predictive. Amara saw people who hadn't visited Oradour-sur-Glane yet, but would. Saw them experiencing the massacre. Saw them being absorbed into the memorial consciousness. She saw dates and faces and names of people whose deaths hadn't happened yet, but were predetermined by their intention to document this place. The village was marking future witnesses, pulling them toward itself across time, ensuring its memory would never fade by continuously collecting new consciousness to experience and preserve the original trauma. What she published in her research paper created international controversy. Dr. Amara Okonkwo's final academic work, submitted August 1, 2024, was titled Conscious Preservation: Evidence of Collective Memory Manifestation in Sites of Mass Trauma. She detailed everything: her experience, the 691 absorbed witnesses, the mechanism by which traumatic locations develop autonomous preservation drives. She connected Oradour-sur-Glane to other sites: Pripyat, Auschwitz, Hiroshima, Rwanda's genocide memorials, all showing similar patterns of absorbed witnesses, of living people becoming part of preserved memory, of places developing hunger for consciousness to validate historical suffering. Her conclusion was controversial. Abandoned sites of mass trauma don't stay abandoned. They fill with the consciousness of witnesses who get too close, creating eternal loops of trauma re-experience that serve as the most perfect memorials possible. Actual lived experience preserved across time through continuous harvesting of observer consciousness. The academic community tried to have her committed. Her university demanded psychiatric evaluation. Colleagues called her work trauma-induced psychosis masquerading as research. The French government threatened legal action for spreading dangerous misinformation about a national memorial site. But Amara had evidence. Her recordings from July 10th showing impossible temperature changes, sounds from 1944, shadow phenomena. Medical records showing she'd experienced extreme psychological trauma without external cause. And her impossible knowledge. She'd given authorities information about the 45 forgotten victims, details that weren't in any historical record, but which archival research eventually confirmed. She knew things she couldn't know unless she'd actually been there in 1944. Actually experienced the massacre, actually absorbed the memories of the dead. That's when she made her decision. 3 days after publishing her paper, August 4, 2024, Dr. Amara Okonkwo drove back to Oradour-sur-Glane. Her family tried to stop her. Her sister physically blocked her car, begging her not to go. But Amara explained calmly, "I'm not leaving. I'm becoming memory. The 642 need a permanent witness, someone who experienced their deaths and can hold their consciousness. I understand now. I'm not suffering from trauma. I'm performing a function. I'm the living memorial they've been waiting for. And I need to complete the transformation. I need to go back to the church and stay there. Permanently. Security footage captured her final walk through the village. She arrived at midnight, walking past barriers, past warning signs, moving directly to the burned church. She stood in the center where the altar had been, spread her arms, and spoke to cameras no one knew she'd set up. I understand now. I'm not leaving. I'm becoming memory itself. For everyone who can't remember. For everyone who died unknown. For every victim whose story was lost. I'll hold them all. I'll be the vessel, the memorial, the eternal witness. And then she simply stood there. Didn't move. Didn't respond to guards who found her at dawn. Stood with eyes open, breathing, alive, but completely unresponsive to external stimuli. What medical examination revealed was impossible. Amara's body was alive, but her consciousness was elsewhere. Brain scans showed activity patterns never recorded in medical literature. All regions firing simultaneously in perfect synchronization, as if her mind was processing 642 different streams of consciousness at once. When doctors tried to move her, her body resisted with impossible strength. When they tried to sedate her, medications had no effect. She was locked in place by something stronger than physical constraints. She was held there by the weight of memory, by the collective will of 642 souls who'd finally found a permanent witness willing to experience their deaths forever. The French government classified the situation. Amara was declared missing. Her family was told she'd suffered a breakdown and wandered off. The church at Oradour-sur-Glane was closed to visitors indefinitely for structural concerns. But guards stationed there report seeing her, always in the same spot, never moving, never speaking, but aware. Her eyes track visitors. Her lips move in silent recitation of names. And sometimes, late at night, they hear her voice. Not her voice, but voices. 642 voices speaking through her, telling their stories, sharing their memories, ensuring they're never forgotten. Other researchers who've investigated abandoned trauma sites report similar phenomena. Auschwitz guides speak of colleagues who disappeared after spending too long in the gas chambers, later found standing motionless near crematoriums, experiencing the deaths of millions on repeat. Hiroshima has a designated hospital ward for people who visit the Peace Memorial and collapse with radiation sickness symptoms despite no exposure. Their consciousness experiencing the bomb's victims. Rwanda's genocide memorials have scattered reports of witnesses found catatonic, reliving massacres, becoming living vessels for preserved trauma. Dr. Okonkwo's research wasn't insanity. It was documentation of a phenomenon that occurs wherever mass death imprints consciousness so strongly that places themselves become hungry for witnesses to validate and preserve the memory. The 180 people who reported experiences at Oradour-sur-Glane before Amara's visit are being monitored. All show progressive symptoms of memory integration. All report gradually forgetting their own lives while remembering lives of 1944 victims. All describe feeling drawn back to the village. 11 have already returned and now stand with Amara in the church, unresponsive to external stimuli, experiencing the massacre endlessly, becoming permanent memorials. The French government has quarantined the area, but can't explain what's happening. Medical science has no framework for consciousness transferred from the dead to the living. Psychology has no treatment for memory absorption from events you never experienced. The 180 witnesses are becoming what Amara became. living vessels for historical trauma too strong to fade, too important to forget, requiring eternal consciousness to properly preserve. Amara's family visits sometimes, though, guards turn them away. But her mother swears she can see Amara through the church windows, standing motionless, aging slowly, becoming less human and more memorial with each passing month. Her sister reports dreams of the massacre despite never visiting Oradour-sur-Glane, experiencing deaths through Amara's absorbed memories, feeling the connection across distance. Amara's consciousness has become so full of the dead that it's overflowing, leaking into people connected to her, spreading the preserved trauma like a virus of memory that seeks more vessels, more witnesses, more eternal preservation. The village posts daily statistics that no one can explain. Current preserved consciousness, 734. The number climbs steadily. People visit despite warnings, get too close to the memorial's influence, experience the massacre, and become part of the permanent witness collective standing in the church. By 2030, officials estimate the church will contain over 1,000 standing witnesses, all experiencing June 10, 1944, eternally, all serving as living memorials to the 642 who died. And the phenomenon is spreading. Similar collective witnesses are appearing at other trauma sites worldwide. Mass death creates memory fields strong enough to demand permanent preservation through absorbed consciousness. Dr. Amara Okonkwo's final coherent words, recorded by her sister during a brief moment of responsiveness in October 2024, explained everything. I'm not suffering. I'm remembering. For all of them. I hold 642 complete lives now. I experience their deaths constantly, but I also experience their lives before death, their joy, their love, their mundane morning routines, and their grand hopes. I'm the complete record of 642 human existences, and it's growing. Every new witness who joins us adds their lifetime of experience to the collective. We're becoming an archive of consciousness, a library of lived experience, the most perfect memorial possible because we don't just remember the dead, we are the dead, experiencing their lives forever, ensuring they truly never die as long as we remain conscious. It's beautiful. It's terrible. It's eternal. And I wouldn't leave even if I could, because someone has to remember. Someone has to be the witness. And I finally understand that's what I've always been meant to be. Not a researcher studying memory, but memory itself. Living, eternal, necessary. She hasn't spoken since. She just stands in that burned church, eyes open, breathing slowly, experiencing June 10th, 1944. Endlessly while new witnesses join her one by one, all becoming permanent memorials to trauma too powerful to be forgotten, to deaths too important to be reduced to mere historical records, to lives that demand eternal conscious preservation through the sacrifice of the living who dare to truly understand what happened in places where memory itself became alive and hungry and permanent.